In this video, It's recording and stuff.
Julius Caesar.
Okay, I'm going to get this started. Good afternoon. Okay, let's get the work session started. It's September 17th, 2025. Time is 4:02 p.m. In attendance are, I see 6 board members here, and I did see Director Hafley at the
She's
back
coming.
as well, so she will be joining us along with Superintendent Gall and his team. We do have Andy Swanson from CDE joining us as well. Thank you for being here, appreciate it. I've got to know you a little bit over the last couple of years, so it's glad that you can join us in person today and talk about a couple of schools. And then we have Ms. Callback here as well, and then a plethora of district admin people who are in the audience. Just to provide some context as to what we are looking at today, we are looking at specific schools that after the CMAS testing that took place in April were identified through the initial school performance framework as under the state watch list, either as a priority improvement school or a turnaround school. The timeline at this point is, this is a work session discussion where we are looking at those school improvement plans. I'm sure the school staff is going to join us in this discussion as well. And then the timeline we are looking at it is that at some point in time, probably by the end of the month, this will come as a non-action item at a board agenda, and then followed that by an action item sometime in October. And so that's the timeline I have. I don't see Superintendent Gall yet here to lead off the conversation, so
I'll kick that.
I will. Do you want to lead this up, or do I want to throw it to Ms. Callback?
I'll start real quick.
Okay.
So Mitchell and Galileo are both on pathway plans that we know were approved by the State Board of Education last spring. So February for Galileo and then Mitchell in May. And part of the reporting requirement after CDE, the Colorado State Department of Education Board, approves the plans is that Andy Swanson, our turnaround partner, comes to our local board and shares context on what they've seen since the pathway plan was implemented. So that's what you're gonna hear first for Mitchell and Galileo tonight.
Okay.
We're perfect. I love that we started. Nicole
Chief
can sit
Otler.
there all night. It would be great.
It's a good impression of you out
That's
here,
right.
so,
And
but I'll turn it over to you.
a perfect introduction for Andy. And Andy represents dozens of people and decades, if not centuries, worth of experience at CDE. I've been in this game a long time. I came into this game in the state turnaround effort in the state of Michigan. So we reported directly to the governor on the lowest 10% of schools in the state of Michigan, which all happen to be in the Detroit Public Schools portfolio. And so I've been through this report to the state drill before. In Oakland, we certainly had our challenges. In Washington, D.C., we had many failed schools. We reported directly to the mayor. This is the only time I've ever had support from the intermediary. And Andy and his team have been with us from my first day in the district to tell me the things I didn't know about the history of some of our schools and the challenges they had. And he's actually been through every step of the way, through how we were and what we were going to present to the state on how we think that we can improve outcomes for students to be able to be in a place where we don't have to come back to the state board. But I would say that Colorado's got something in both its process and certainly in Andy and the team that you represent. So it is actually, although it's an awful space to have to be in, it is with great honor and privilege that I introduce you to our Board of Education. Andy, over to you.
So before you get there to the board, we have not only Andy here, but we have several other school USIPs to consider as well. So we have a lot on our agenda this evening, along with executive session. To adhere to the timeline, I would encourage you to wait until the presentation is done and then prioritize your questions so that we can keep moving on in a timely manner to the next item on the agenda. With that, to you.
Great, thank you. Thank you all. Good afternoon, good to see you all. Board President Malpacum, Superintendent Gall, directors. Very excited to be here with you all. As Superintendent Gall said, I've had the opportunity to be the support lead, as we refer to it, for Colorado Springs District 11 for the last 4 years, I think, at this point. And so it's every step of the way been actually a true pleasure to be able to work with your district staff, with your school leadership, with school staff. That. So honored to be able to be here with you all today, and I'm going to go through a handful of things, and then of course at the end, questions of what concerns you the most, what are areas that you all really want to get some more information on. Within that, so a couple of things that we're really going to focus on today is updates on progress for Mitchell and Galileo, and then what are some key next steps and focus for kind of first semester for those two sites, as well as anything else throughout the district as far as CDE supports go with that. So looking at the district as a whole, first of all, performance frameworks, as you all know, were released earlier this month. Here you can see the district's overall performance frameworks from 2022 to 2025. While the percentage of points earned did go back a little bit this last year from 24 to 25, as you can see, still accredited with an improvement plan type. Happy to talk through any of that a little bit further, and a higher percentage of points earned on 25 than either 22 or 23. A couple of data trends at a very high level would be some of the decreases, if we were to narrow it down, were mostly due to decreases in elementary growth across the district in math and ELA, as well as lower growth from multilingual learners. A couple of bright spots when we think of district-wide trend data would be at the high school level, where we saw an increase in PSAT and SAT reading and writing growth, as well as an increase in graduation rate, and just as important, a decrease in the dropout rate, which all of those were contributing factors to actually a little bit of an increase on that side, thinking of the district overall. Happy to dive in further at the end here if there's other data trends that you're curious about on that. Pivoting to Mitchell and Galileo overall, as Ms. Ottmer mentioned, both schools came before the state board this last spring. You can see up here, I pulled out a couple of relevant pieces when it came to the state board order for each of those. As a reminder, when a school gets to, or a district gets to 5 straight years of priority improvement or turnaround, state law indicates the need to come before the state board and get a state board directed action, which would be one of the prescribed pathways that's within statute. As an aside, and happy to talk through further if you find this interesting, we just recently had an education accountability bill pass this last spring that goes into effect now this school year, in which some of the options have shifted a little bit in a way that's a little more flexible for sites, that might be a little more contextual moving forward. And also the plan requirements have been codified within law, so we actually think these are really good developments and will be really helpful, especially for sites like Galileo and Mitchell. So as you can see up there, Mitchell's order was to continue their innovation plan and add in the partnership with instructional empowerment to be a partial external manager with a focus on academics. Both of these aspects were right in line with what was presented by the district for Mitchell High School. The state board overall, if you had a chance to hear their comments and their questions, overall was very impressed with the plan that was put forward by the high school. Just as a reminder, this is Mitchell's second time before the state board. They actually came forward first in 2022, and that was an early action in year 4 because the district was putting the innovation plan in place. So this would have been a rehearing for them. In February, Galileo came forward for their initial year 5 hearing and proposed a conversion to a community school with a partnership with instructional empowerment. I will say the state board was very impressed with that kind of presentation. One of the state board members actually said it was the strongest turnaround plan they've had come forward. So that is a good foundation, something we are very excited about as they start to execute on that plan. Both schools, I would say, acquitted themselves very well and put the district in a good light. The state board was very impressed with the ability of Superintendent Gall, of all the principals and district leaders, with their ability to name the issues at hand and a strong plan moving forward for both of those sites. Talking about specifically the progress monitoring of sites with state board directed action. So you all know all sites that have state board directed action do receive CDE progress monitoring and then reports to the state board. So all of them receive at least a minimum of 4 visits. Fortunately or unfortunately for your sites, they see me more. They can tell you offline whether that's a good or a bad thing, but I'm typically on site a lot more than that in order to provide further support for them. And then twice a year, I provide formal updates written and presented to the state board. That is in March for mid-year and then in September. So I was just in front of our board either last week or the before to talk with them about Mitchell specifically. Galileo had not yet started progress monitoring, so I did not do a report on Galileo at that point. And then we typically have a presentation to the local board, which we're doing right now for most of our sites. Our visits typically follow the structure that you can see up there. So regular support and planning meetings with the district. I meet usually at least monthly, actually usually every couple of weeks with Sherry to just discuss what's the support plan for both of these sites as well as the district overall. And then I try to just join the instructional empowerment visits. We don't feel that there's a need or it's a good use of anyone's time for them to just meet differently with me when I can just join in on those meetings. Both sites and instructional empowerment have been great partners I join those rigor appraisals, learning walks, in order so that it's not extra time away for school and district leaders. Because we know their time is so valuable, they should be getting into classrooms, they should be helping out with instruction. They don't need to be pulled aside by state bureaucrats to do separate work. That's going to take them away from the vital work they're doing for their school. So our goal is to prioritize existing meetings for any of this. Both of these sites, as I said, have state board directed action. Within their order from the state board, there are return terms, which is if the sites do not show improvement, coming back before the state board for a hearing. We are all committed to that not happening, but if it were to happen, it would be due to the 2027 SPF. So that would give 2 years of implementation of the plan. If either site has priority improvement or turnaround in the 27 SPF, then they would come back before the state board during the 27-28 school year for another hearing. Getting a little more detailed about each of these two sites. Mitchell is priority improvement year 7 as of the 2025 SPF. The school did show improvement. If you remember on the 2024 SPF, it was a turnaround plan type. That moved up to priority improvement with a 4.5% increase on points earned on the SPF. I've had the opportunity to work with Mitchell, I believe, for about 4 years now. The first 2 or 3 years of that was significant staffing instability, as you all know, and this year has brought much greater stability on that front, which has allowed the school to really focus on core instruction. I would say starting in October last year through last year was the most focus I've seen that leadership team be able to provide to instructional leadership and some of the most movement I've seen there. The instructional coaches and the IE staff have been able to help support teachers moving toward grade level aligned practices, and there has been an evidence of stronger implementation across classrooms. I was able to be there a couple of times already this year, and it's been great to see the level of urgency and momentum that's starting off this year stronger than I have seen in prior years, specifically around instructional movement and the work that's happening with teachers within that. The state level data at Mitchell has shown improvement across subject areas, an increase in growth, although across all of those we have yet to see the 50 median growth percentile mark, which is where we need to see at a bare minimum to really see some strong growth for kids to be able to get where they need to get. Achievement did decline on PSAT but rose on SAT. And while the results are modest and in need of improvement, I would say Mitchell is in a better position structurally than it has been in years. And I am very optimistic about the momentum that I saw at the start of this school year. Shifting to Galileo, the school is priority improvement year 6. A caveat and a note on that, the school did earn enough points on the SPF, an increase on the SPF to earn an improvement plan type, but was decreased due to participation. That participation rate meant that they were lower than the 95% accountability participation rate needed on ELA and math. And so that decreases them 1 level on the SPF. I was actually just talking with Dr. Kalicki. We are looking at the request to reconsider process that we are encouraged at the possibility the district may be able to get that raised to improvement, which would be an exciting change for the school. If that were to happen, that would move Galileo to on watch, which would mean that if on the 26th SPF Galileo got improvement or performance, they would completely exit performance watch, they would completely exit state board directed action at that point. So we will know the decision on request to reconsider in December within that. We're going to work through, so we'll be working through that process. I worked with the Galileo team a lot last year. I'm sure they were happy to not see me quite as much so far at the start of this year from that. But I did get a chance to visit the school in the first couple of weeks. Despite their principal transition, I've been very impressed with the level of urgency that I saw by school leaders and the focus of their work with IE. We had a chance to walk classrooms, the culture in the building when I was there, the focus of instruction, the focus of their leadership. I was very impressed with the way in which they started out this year. I would say from my limited vantage point, it is the strongest start I've seen at Galileo in the 4 years I've had a chance to visit there in August or September. So excited to see that momentum continue across that building. Looking ahead to our work together, focus on implementation. As I said, I will be joining rigor appraisals, rigor walks, some of the work with IE when I can, and to provide supports that I can for the schools. I want to make one short note about Swigert Middle School, who I know you're going to hear from here later this evening. They did move to year 4 on the accountability clock. In slipping down from improvement to priority improvement this year. I'll be meeting with Principal Cockrell and Director Kalbach, actually Friday, we realized, in a couple of days, just to talk about supports for the school. So the school will need a state review panel visit later on this year in anticipation of the possibility of an accountability hearing in 26-27. So we will be discussing what are the needs at the school, how can we best support within that. And then finally, I will be helping the district prepare easy grant applications, opening this fall and having discussions about how any supports that might be needed across other schools across the system. I am personally very excited for the work of the district now. Systems are getting in place. There's some momentum around some strong streamlined work across an instructional vision for the district and some infrastructure in place that I don't think we've had for the last few years. And so I think there's going to be some accelerated momentum this year. And with that, that's the end of my kind of presentation, and so happy to open it up to any questions or any areas you all want to dive into.
Yeah, thank you so much for your active engagement in District 11 schools. Looks like you're a constant presence in some of our schools, so appreciate your feedback. And the overarching feedback that I'm getting from you is that the momentum that you see, at least at Galileo and Mitchell, and possibly even Swigert, the momentum that you are seeing at this time is better off than what you saw 2, 3, 4 years back, or even last year. And the focus on instruction, the sense of urgency that is there in that school, all of that is positive feedback that's the feedback that I see you deliver to the board at this time.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, at both sites, I would say I'm very encouraged about the structures and systems and urgency that's taking place right now.
And the next year at this time, it's going to be you that we are going to hold accountable, not Superintendent Gall, because you.
No, we are ultimately accountable.
I'm just kidding.
We're going to be next year at this time. We're going to be celebrating the academic growth we're going to see across both sites.
Board, open it up for questions, comments on what Mr. Swanson presented, and generally speaking about other questions that you may have as well on the state testing, SBF, any of that nature. Who wants to go first? Thomas? Director Carey? No. Director Art.
Thanks. I just have on that last slide, support for any incoming Easy Grant applications. Can you just address briefly what the benefit of an Easy Grant would be to a school and any schools that across the district that might be interested?
Yeah, great. Thanks for that question. So EASY, for those who might not be familiar, acronym for Empowering Actions in School Improvement. It is many routes and many pathways that are open to any state or federally identified school. We joke because of that it's a very comprehensive grant. It is actually anything but easy if there are people who have filled it out or been in that system. With that, it really does provide multitude of opportunities depending on where a school is at. So if a school is in need of a diagnostic review, for example, there's grant funding available for an external provider to possibly do a diagnostic review to see what are the issues right now within the school. There's district design and led options that are a little more open to evidence-based possibilities. Within that, there's CDE supports, such as our Transformation Network, or other CDE-led supports that might be good fits for schools, depending on what their needs are. And then there's a school turnaround leader development grant opportunity that the district's taken advantage of. So the UVA work, a lot of that was paid for through Easy Grant funding. So we will look at anybody's federal IDs, I think just went out today or yesterday. What's going to happen is federally identified, state identified schools, depending on how far they are on each of those clocks or what their designation would be, get a level of prioritization points. We'll see what those prioritization points are. What we do is the district can submit grant applications on behalf of any site that is identified. And then we score all of those. Every application that meets a threshold of being fundable, we put from the highest priority to lowest priority and just go until the money runs out. So we'll look at which sites have enough priority points that we would typically see being worth an application for, and then see what those needs are within that. So there is a wide variety, but it's a lot within that. I hope that answers your question.
Yep,
We'll see.
generally, I worry about the schools that aren't on priority or that are sinking or might sink next year too, and maybe we anticipate that already.
Yeah, so our academic strategy is not dependent upon access to the Easy Grant. We certainly use that where we can. Sherry has been managing that and seen wild variation of how it is awarded over the 3 years that we've worked together. But it is then a place where we supplement. So the strategy is consistent to the needs of the school. The Easy Grant gives us the ability to either get deeper, further, or more sustainable over time. And we will see what our application meets this year.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Director Huber.
I think one of the concerns with Mitchell too is, we have feeder schools that are also struggling going into that, including Swigert. So when you are discussing
Swigert and Galileo.
Swigert and Galileo. So when we're talking about the fit of the pathways and the Spring State Review Panel, can you explain more about what that would look like and what that process is, and if that's going to be enough to turn these elementary schools around that are kind of going into Mitchell?
It's a great question. So the State Review Panel itself is statutorily, it's a body of external educators that apply to be a part of this, and it is solely for kind of the report to the state board in preparation for a possible hearing based on the statutory pathways. So the statutory pathways for a district-run school are possibly school closure, conversion to a charter, innovation status, partial or full external management, conversion to a community school, or the brand new one this year. There's a more flexible pathway with a few options underneath that. What they'll do is they'll come into Swigert probably this spring when we get it set up. And they will talk to teachers, they'll walk classrooms, they'll talk to leaders, they'll look at documents, and they will write a report about which of the pathways they think would be the best fit were Swigert to have to come forward for a state board hearing. So it would just be for Swigert, and it's for that kind of tailored purpose. I would say to the heart of your question of we have a whole feeder pattern of need. So that's where we would look at what are the Easy Grant opportunities, not necessarily State Review Panel, that might support some of that aspect of things, and then of course the other things that the district is doing. I do think having a more holistic strategy like instructional empowerment across sites and having a vision of instruction along those lines that is common amongst schools that shares kids is very helpful for kids going through a system and for improvement efforts across time. So that's very encouraging of that kind of aspect of things, if that helps answer some of that.
Very much so, thank you. One more question on that. We can see the attendance rate on the CDE State Colorado. Is there a reason why it's 23, 24? When do we get to see 24, 25 on there? Because I was really impressed by the attendance numbers at Mitchell, 23, 24. I'm very interested to see how that aligns with what we're receiving out of those test scores.
Yes, that's a great question. I can follow up on the exact timing. I want to say it's December, January that gets updated, right around the same time that we'll get some of the updated graduation rate data, dropout rate data. There's a nice set that we will get somewhere around semester time.
Wonderful, thank you.
Any other questions from board members on this topic? Andy, I do have a couple of questions just for clarity. Swigert, it's on the 4th year on the state watch list. Is there anything at the local level that we have to do at this time, or is that a year? We got to worry about that next year if they continue.
Great question. The only additional requirement other than the typical, you have to send the letter home and Swigert will present to you all, is that in the UIP process, you do need to do an initial table or chart or discussion of how the pathways, each of the pathways may or may not be a good fit for the school as an initial look. You have to do that for the state review panel anyway, and I know district and school leadership will be working through that. So a good example, school closure. Why is that not a good option for Swigert, right? And those kinds of aspects of things. That's about the only requirement other than obviously we're going to be working through what are the improvement efforts, how can we help support, and starting a deep dive on what might be the good pathway plan if it does get to a year 5 situation.
Okay, so that happens in the current school improvement plan, and then you will do the review, state review, and then give us a report on that, and then if necessary, hopefully it's not,
Right.
they will exit, then, thank you. Second question, again, this is for my clarity. If a school is in the second or third year on the state watch list, then they have to go through 2 successive years of showing improvement or performance before they exit the clock, right?
That's right. Anybody year 2 or later. So that includes
So
Michigan.
year 1, they can exit next year on
Yes.
the clock.
That's right.
So all they have to do is one year of improvement or performance.
Yes. If they
So
were
it's really
to-
important, like Wilson would fall under that category. This is year 1 for them, so they don't go to year 2, because if they go to year 2, then they have to show 2 successive years.
That's right.
Okay, great. To the Wilson staff, it's really important that we get them out from. I know in the past, we have received several, I'm not completely clear about this, so that's why I'm asking you. The third page in the high school SPF thing, the post-secondary and workforce readiness rating, it's always, I'm sure the district staff is reaching out to you and you can provide the support. So there is data that is lagging behind sometimes, and we just want to make sure that the accurate information is reflected there. Okay, is that something that you see happening now with our, specifically at Mitchell and stuff?
Yes, absolutely. So with the district, I think every year and every fall, we've had conversations about making sure, especially the matriculation rate data, of making sure that is being reported accurately. And to your point, that one, matriculation rate, graduation rate, dropout rate has the year lag. So the information you see on the SPF for, say, in Mitchell, for example, is from the 23-24 school year. We'll get that updated information in December, January. And so we'll know what that looks like on the SPF. One caveat on that one as well, that new education bill 1278 that I mentioned is some of the more, I guess, extreme or larger changes that are going to happen due to that are in that third page of the high school report. That's not happening this year. At the earliest, that will happen in 27. But there are some changes happening. One we know is the SAT, which currently sits in PWR, will shift to academic achievement. So it will no longer be in the PWR space. And then matriculation rate will be its own, but there will also be another measure that's the measuring how students are doing in high school with post-secondary workforce readiness requirements. So students who are taking AP classes, concurrent enrollment classes, CTE classes. The state board will undergo a rulemaking process this year of exactly what that looks like, so it's worth paying attention to that. But that should drive some substantive change probably in high school programming, and what does it look like to get points on the SPF in high school. So just to get that on your radar, like let's keep paying attention. I'll make sure obviously district staff gets the information as that's there, but those are some pretty significant shifts that we want to make sure it's not easy to shift high school programming on a dime. So the earlier that any of that shifts as you want to, as you see it for your students, but also see in order to shift to those expectations, it's going to be helpful.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you so
just to
much.
add to Andy, the district has been working and believes we're well positioned, particularly for the latter part of that change. As you see, as we start our board meetings, we are always celebrating our CTSO opportunities for our students in ways that I think are really not just Pikes Peak leading, but maybe even state leading. So we do think that that'll be more reflective of the overall experience and how that positions kids better for life, college, career, and whatever comes next. There will be a larger challenge though for us on the achievement side. That SAT now kind of stands alone in that achievement bucket. But I do think our page 3 will be better served by the work that this district board and community have committed to for decades. We have strongest CTE programming in the state for a district of our size.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here. I'll leave you with this, and this can be something that you can provide as a source of information for the board. The educational accountability bill that you talked about, if there is some information that you are putting from the CDE level, sometimes I've seen like helpful videos and stuff that is easy for us to digest, and we don't have to delve into 20 pages of educational language out there to figure it out. Yeah, sometimes it's easy to watch, and with the timeline constraints, it makes it easier for us. If you have anything like that, please forward it to me. I'll forward it to the board, so it makes it aware of what is coming in the next year or so for the board to keep focus on. Appreciate your feedback. I don't see any other questions from the board. Yes.
May I add just a piece to remind the board of before we leave this topic for Mitchell and Galileo? Under state's guidance, the pathway plan for each school, the ones that were approved last year by the state board, are these schools' USIPs, and so you'll see that uploaded to CDE as their USIP, and there won't be a separate need for you to approve a separate USIP from the pathway plan. Correct?
Yes, correct. So they have one plan to help streamline for everybody.
Yeah, perfect. And thank you again for being here and being part of our schools and providing the feedback as often as you do. I don't know if you are going to hang around for the rest of the school's USIP presentation. I don't know what your schedule is. You're more than welcome to stay here and answer questions, or if you've got other things on your agenda, so be it.
I will stay and listen, but from the audience.
Oh, okay. That way, okay. You're still around. We
I will
can
still
ask
be
you
around,
questions
yes.
if.
I'll put a mustache on, so I'm harder to find. Thank you all.
Thank you, appreciate it. And the Mitchell staff and Galileo staff, if you are here? Just raise your hands if you are here. Thank you. Appreciate both of you being here, and we've had opportunities to visit your school and see the actual engagement that is taking place in the classrooms. But the sense of urgency that Andy talked about is really important. So we need to push towards. You've shown improvements, the supports and culture and everything is in place. Now we need to cross the finish line and move both schools out of the state watch list next year. Those are the clear expectations you've heard from the board, you've heard from the superintendent as well. Thank you for being here, appreciate. And you guys can stay here too and listen to the, hang in to support the rest of your peers that are going to be joining us up here. I'm talking to the Mitchell and Galileo staff, or you can go ahead with the rest of your day. Superintendent Gall, I'm going to turn it over to you. I think we have Adams up here next.
We do.
And their school improvement.
I'm super excited to see Carolyn at the table. It's been just a lot of fun to watch Carolyn go from one of our strongest assistant principals and jump right into the fire, taking over Adams, knowing that these challenges were coming, and then really leaning into the district strategies and really being an exemplar of, if we do our best to implement well, we can show that we can improve even in the most challenging of environments. A walk in the building at Adams is completely different than it was this time last year. The staff is there, the staff is well-trained, the staff is continuing to lean in, and Carolyn actually demonstrated a great example of with the pressures of the superintendent walking into your classroom, it's not always easy, and Carolyn gave the teacher of record an opportunity that, why don't we exercise one of these strategies, and as soon as we did that, the class flowed right back into how we try our best to deliver high quality instruction. And so much appreciation. I hand the microphone and the clicky over to Carolyn Grant.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you all. I appreciate all of you listening to our story, and we're gonna start with this slide right here. I'll jump right in. Last year we were facing that way. It was a little less scary to look at all the people. Thank you guys all for being here from Adams. I appreciate you and everybody else in our center, or our
Those
central
who
area.
are from Adams, could you put up your hands?
Thank
Thank you.
So this slide right here, I do want to start with just some celebrations and some bright spots for our school. I know we're going to enter into some data that's not what we want to see yet. So I do want to highlight that we are 100% staffed this year. That's amazing. So when I came on board the year before, we were looking at, 14 openings that were being filled at the time of my arrival. And so you can see here, we brought the pride at the beginning of school. And this is our wolf pack, we call it. And so we have our students outside, and we have just amazing teachers smiling every day, sharing our story. Sorry guys, thank you. So more of our wolf pack. And then with all of this said, another bright spot is you're gonna see that we were building conditions last year, so starting off in a situation where we had 60% new staff, so we had 10 out of 15 teachers that were brand new to Adams, and 7 of those 10 were brand new to teaching. So this year we have 13 classroom teachers, and we have 2 of those teachers that are new, and they are brand new teachers to education as well. But some of them can be here tonight, they're in induction, so 6 of them are over at induction right now, so we're just still continuing to grow constantly amidst all of the actions that they're being called to and the work they're doing. They're still saying, hey, let's take on another thing, we still wanna get better at getting better. Our attendance in August last year at this time, we're at 89%, this year at 91%, so that's exciting. Speaking about attendance, we have 136 students that have a 90% or higher attendance rate, and we have 77 that have 100% attendance rate.
Wow.
So that's exciting for us. So yeah, we celebrate that. We've done a lot of work behind the scenes, the AP is great, been tracking all of that and leaning into support. Our story. So our data analysis, with this story, we do have a sense of urgency, and so I do wanna go through that. But I do wanna say that panic is not in our game plan, because panic's driven out of fear. And so we're going with urgency because that's a belief and a faith that you can change something. And so it is my job, and I'm fully aware, to elevate that urgency and keep it at the forefront of our work. And so we'll be doing that. And that we just had an ILT meeting, so sorry, that's why I popped in right from that. So we literally just reviewed some more data, our STAR data, our DIBELS data, so we are in the trenches. Our teachers understand the urgency in the lift that they're being asked to do and pull. So please know that is part of our culture. We're all committed to it. It's not just a me thing, trying to pull them on pushing, and they're going right along with it, and they're leaning into all the work. On this slide, you're gonna see that at the top, I wish I had my glasses, that the ELA, you can see that our cut scores here, they're not where they need to be, obviously an achievement in ELA or math or science at this point in time. But you can see that we do have 5 or 6% scale score points that we could have respectively gotten in a lot of these categories. So that's about equating to 10 children. So we're doing a lot of work this year, and we'll get into that later on what we're doing to our call to action around that work. And then if you go down to the growth section right there, you're gonna see that we are, based on our growth now from last year, we can say that we do have approaching growth in ELA. And we did a lot of work with text first planning and leaning into that work, and so that did pay off for us, even though marginal, it's still a win. And so our work is slow and steady, it's on a trajectory, and it's on a positive trajectory. Math, you can see here too that we do have a call out for math. And we are also doing some work to make sure that we are addressing those pockets of opportunity for us and our students. This slide right here is going to be addressing, you can see by our teachers and by the breakouts that we are, it's just basically reiterating the last slide, that we do have a serious call out of action for math. We were very close in a lot of categories to get to that MGP of 50 in ELA, but we did not make that even, the cut scores for even to get to 40 on math. So math is definitely a work that we're gonna do systematically. It's not teacher by teacher, it's gonna have to be through our entire system. And so we are well aware of that, and we are breaking down the pieces to get to that work. We've already started that work actually, so we're really excited about that. And we understand as a school that in our population right now, 50 is not even enough, right? 50 is only 1 year's worth of growth per student, and we're looking to get to 60 or higher. And that is a big lift for us, but we are all committed to the work. We're running toward the work, we're not running away from the work. Everybody's invested in our school that works there. We believe in our students, and we believe in one another. I'm gonna talk more about coaching later, but on this slide too, it's gonna take not only our teachers coaching teachers and helping each other, we're able to use our site-based budgeting opportunity to bring in another coach. So that's gonna help alleviate that pressure as well, and just really plan those intentional lessons as we go. This is also a breakdown of our score here. So you can see that we did increase the top by 3% on our ELA, we decreased the bottom, still marginally, but we are looking to still elevate that, because you can see that we left 26% of kids on the table in ELA. So that's an opportunity for us. And then math, same thing, we grew by 1%, still leaving that 15% on the table in that approaching category, and then decreasing the bottom by 1%. So we're moving in the right direction, it's like marginal, but it's going, and we have every intention to make that happen, and we, like I say, are very urgent in our work to do this, and we're very excited to do this in our work. Looking at our trend over time and our data story through this piece, you can see that we're not able to sustain, our overall trajectory is flat, and we're going backwards in our growth on that part. So what we do need to do is this is gonna take a lot of work, again, trying to trend in the right direction, but our increases are seasonally not growing and carrying over to the next assessment. So it's gonna take some more intentional work on trying to get us to sustain and not anticipate, if those dips are being anticipated, we can just make quicker pivots in what we're trying to do to get those scores up. Our data story here through the 5E, as you know, if a school scores green in 3 categories, they're 10% more likely to be a successful school. So, I'm sorry, 10 times.
There we go.
Thank you. So we grew up group 2 of our measures right here, and those are effective leaders and collaborative teachers. And inside of that work, I mean, that's all part of building that system and that culture and the conditions we were trying to impact last year. And so one of our highest rating scores was a 98 out of the 100, and that falls under the collaborative teachers for PD. And so we implemented the Wolfpack Academy, and we personalize our learning every single month to what we need based on our data in real time. So that's a win for us right here. We are targeting some critical moves in supportive environment, which we'll talk about later. But we're really excited about this work. This says we're trending in the right direction and building that culture and that climate we're trying to achieve to get to that hard work of instruction. Our first rigor appraisal with instructional empowerment occurred on September the 4th. Plotted on this bar graph, you can see since last October, the 1st September to now, our trajectory is still increasing to get those conditions in place. So we have teaming in every single classroom. Teamings are being formed. We have tasks in place. Every classroom has a focus wall, or focus board, focus area this year. So we all are aligned to standards-driven instruction, posting learning targets, our success criteria. We've added vocabulary this year and resources so students know what they do when they're learning, and teachers are driven off that work through planning that they do in their PLC groups. You can see some kiddos here. We implement roles, we have norms, all the processes that we're doing, those structures we're building on a consistent basis, we practice daily. So we can say 100% of classrooms are offering this on a daily basis, kindergarten all the way to 5th. Some of the challenges we faced in 5E specifically will go first. When you look at supportive environment, it's not only do kids feel safe, but we have uncovered that kids are reporting that they do not feel safe. And under that layer is walking home from school in the bathrooms and the hallways, but it's deeper than that too. It's, do my peers value hard work? Do they do their homework? So when you break those questions and you go all the way down, it's the culture in the classroom and at the school level that says hard work is important. And so we're finding that kids are not yet resonating with that. And so like through our hard work, that's one of our goals, is to just elevate that culture of rigor. And so that's the minute you walk in the door to the minute you go home, and expecting high things of them, because they can do hard work. They can do hard things just like other children in other schools. So we want that to be the message that we're sending to them. So that's work we're also working on. I spoke to the Wolfpack Academy a little bit, but this is something that's a great opportunity for us. It's 2 times a month after school. Right now we're reading Fostering Deeper Learning. It's a book provided by Instructional Empowerment, and so we're working through how to create culture, that culture of rigor in classrooms and in our school. It's we've been through chapter 3, so we're continuing to read the book, and then we are customizing our PD based on math. So we'll get into that in a second, but our CMAS, our MIS 1 is all around data-driven instruction. With that, reflecting on myself, because despite all the wraparound supports I received from the district, which were immense, and I appreciate all of that, our whole school, our staff does, I was unable to lead our school to higher results. And so I own that, because I focused on, when I review my professional practice rubric, I lived in standard 1, which is a lot of operational leadership, and I had to learn how to run a school. And this year my goal and my professional growth plans are to pivot to standard 3. And so that's where it's all about instruction, right? I'm in classrooms, I've set my schedule, we've done our daily stand-ups to reflect that. Like, I'm very proud of the work we're already doing, but it's just gonna continue to get better. And inside of that work comes the student agency, so elevating what kids need to know and be able to do on a daily basis. We're already reaping big benefits of that. I had a kid walk in this morning, came and found me, shook my hand, and he said, "Hey, Mrs. Graham, how's your day today?" And I just shook his hand and said, "It's great." And he thinks he's the mayor of Adams, as she totally is. And so he just said, "Guess what? My reading scores are going up." And I'm like, "That's awesome, buddy." So we just shook our hands and went about that, gave high fives. But a kid to come say that who's struggling and already knows, like that speaks to our teachers. Like they're already in the data folders. They're already talking to these kids about where they are and where they can go. And I don't want to get emotional, but it's working. It's just working at a slower rate than what we'd like. But we're going to keep accelerating. We're going to keep our foot on the gas and keep that urgency high. And every minute matters with that. So we looked at our CMAS data today by kid, actually in our ILT. That's another example. And so we looked at kids that could do the work but maybe didn't show that effort. And so trying to make that connection of, again, going back to the 5E. Why didn't they do that if they can do that? Do they not value? How can we get them to get motivated to value that hard work will pay off? And so that's just a correlation we're going to continue to foster and breed and go through that realm and working with our GT teacher and trying to create experiences that are going to empower them to make the real world connections. Because right now they don't think they know math exists out of school, so we're trying to make that bridge. District benchmark and coaching, this is exciting for us too. Like I said, we were able to add another coach. Big lift for us, having a lot of new teachers still. Being under your, 3, you're still learning the ropes, right? You're learning how to be a teacher. And being at Adams, it can feel like a more strenuous task sometimes. But we have divided our coaches into K1, planning, PLCs, and pacing and observations through look and learns with instructional empowerment, and also doing the kick-up platform that the district is utilizing. So every teacher's in a coaching cycle. We're about to enter coaching cycle number 2. That's exciting for us. And I myself have coaches, so we model it. Coaches are, it's a gift. It's not something that we shun. One of the beautiful things at our school, I've never worked at a school where every teacher was invested in coaching and asked for it. Our teachers are all on board with coaching. That is not one of our hurdles to get over, and that was built from last year, and it was the same way, and it's amazing to continue to carry that culture over into this year. We are good. We just facilitated a rubric in our DDI, so we're going to be looking at where we are now. We rated ourselves, and we're going to continue to grow on that rubric from the district. How can we become more data-driven, instruction-oriented in all that we do all the time, all the way down from CMAS, CMAS to STAR, to the end-of-module assessments, down to the topic quizzes, down to the exit ticket, to the daily grind of formative assessments, and that intensive tracking that IE requires and that is asked of us. And so we have 5 new plans to get those lined up and get them rolling. Formative assessments, kind of toggled between those two, excuse me for that. But formative assessments, just making sure our exit tickets are in play every single day. We just talked about that too, and teachers are well aware, and to get into tier 2. So every teacher has tier 2 math now in their schedule, which we did not have last year. And so that is based on a daily exit ticket. And so kids are got it, almost got it, do not have it, sorted quickly, and then they're passed out. And so we're trying to engage right off the jump every single day. I don't want to speak to the last one because that was the most exciting about the day. Today is Wednesday, it's PLC day. So today was all about data. I should have had a t-shirt that said I heard data instead, but I love my Wolfpack shirt. So every single PLC today was landing, we got down to item analysis in 4 out of our 6 PLCs. That is so big for us. Teachers were saying, hey, I was teaching, it's OA 3.3. They're talking about standards like it's the language now. It's not just, hey, I think it's made idea key details. We want to get down to that standards level because our vision this year is to create a culture of excellence through agency, collaboration, and, if you know it, say it, standards-driven instruction. And that aligns truly to the theory of D11 that they're trying to get to. And we mapped it out, and we are identically aligned to what the district is doing in our school. And it's not double work, it's not isolated work, it's truly the work that is threaded through the district's vision. So we're there. With this came the whole idea of looking at math and having an MGP of 25 as a school, right? That's disheartening. So it's a huge call of urgency in a situation that we just can't be in. And so what we decided to do is look at all of the standards in math. We picked 5. So we're looking at fractions, multiplying, dividing, decimals, and then geometry with measurement and data going through that piece. And we have already identified those big buckets of standards, we've mapped them backwards all the way down to kindergarten, and those are gonna be the standards we work on, and we're gonna pace that out in our curriculum, and we're gonna really hone in and laser focus on those specific standards to try to elevate and move our whole culture in the right direction. And so we can take that model and then we can replicate it over time and say, hey, we got these 5 down, let's tackle 5 more. Because this is not a lift for only a 5th grade team of teachers to do, and not a 4th grade team teachers. Like, you're only getting growth out of 4th and 5th, but we're all responsible for the students here, not just 4th and 5th grade teachers. So we want to take this to the systematic level of understanding our lift and what that looks like at every grade level. Student agency, our promise right now is every student at Adams is heard, seen, valued, and loved. And we can tell you in all faith and all truth that every single classroom, 100% has agency happening every single day. That's amazing. So our professional learning communities, those are grounded in all of the data review that we're using. They're using the DDI protocol from the district. You can see the classroom up at the top. This is a 1st grade classroom in our school. A lot of our schools are actually pivoting to digital boards, but this is a focus board example of where we have CKLA skills, knowledge, and Eureka all mapped out. So when teachers are planning, they're getting all the way down to that level for every single lesson. And that's a big ask. It's a lot there's no time left. They're maximizing every minute of time they have. We've given them an extra plan time to get every kid access to science this year, which is a huge win for us. And so when teachers are planning, kids are using our STEAM lab and they're engaging in the science kits. And our LTE was able to do that. So for us, so that's great. Is that planning, and so coming a week ahead planned and being intentional about all the things we're asking them to do, because we're using with integrity our CKLA curriculum and also the Eureka curriculum. And on top of being in the situation we're in, learning a new curriculum, that's a big lift. So they're doing amazing though. They are crushing it and they're using every minute that they can of their waking hour. We appreciate the staffing sustainability grant, because it allows them to use their flex time on top of that to go into these standards and then plan the lessons that they need to at their grade level to keep extending. 100% of our grade levels are paced they are within the D11 pacing guide within 4 days, and they are paced together. So I've never worked at a school where I could go in a classroom, that teacher has the same exact learning target as their teammate across the hall, and not only does that allow them to just work at their own high level of rigor, but now the grade level is working at that same level and expectation. And so you can give individual feedback, but this allows us to give PLC teams feedback as a whole, which has been powerful. So you're elevating 2 teachers through coaching versus 1 at a time. Excuse me. Pacing, we have pacing calendars that we're using in every single grade level, so they can go in daily and post their lessons where they are. They post their quizzes, their assessments, when they're doing their data folders, down to the nitty-gritty of what they are doing every single day. They have it at their fingertips right there. They customize their PLC now to become what they need it to be. So if they're ending a module, they're going to engage in that item analysis and do the data reports for that particular content. That's what they're going to do. So they have agency to lift what they need to. Our PD is amazing. The Wolfpack Academy is going on every 2 weeks at our school. So our big push, you can see the coherence map there. We're mapping out those standards. Every teacher at our school has agreed that in our ILT that using one of our MSLs, the collective MSL, to become one of those math standards will be that's what they're going to lift up to do as one of their MSLs. You can see on the bottom left, that is our daily stand-up board that the leadership team meets at. So myself, the AP, and the 2 coaches. So every day on the left, the second column that you see on there, it's every single day. So they map where they're going to be, the coaches, and myself wanting to elevate my instructional leadership. I put a magnet on, I map my whole day. I present what I have going on for the day, and then every time I have a pocket, I'm in a classroom with one of the coaches. So that's our model now, and we're shifting to that piece right there. The bright green on the far right, those are our coaching cycles, and so we're going to be mapping our coaching cycles down to, we know where everybody's at by what goal they have, so we can all support them together, not just one coach at a time. This is the pre-work we did. Those are where we hashed out the standards. I've been working with Liz Jordan. She's been an immense support. I mean, everybody's been an immense support, but this standard work, she's taken that now and put it into a much more beautiful document than my chicken scratch on the right side. And so we're going to work off that document, but it's a formal piece of evidence or a planning tool that we're going to have forever now that we're going to keep going forward with, that we can map out that whole standard by all grades It's pretty impactful. That's our first Wolfpack Academy with Liz. We've engaged in that to talk about CMAS and break that down. I do feel that teachers need to understand what this lift is for a fifth grader, even as a kindergarten teacher, and just the CMAS design process, because then you know where you're trying to go and how to pick the lift up for the students that you're trying to teach. MIS 2 is all around, like we talked about earlier, of supportive environment in our 5E. So we've added S to our HOWLS for safety for PBIS, and that's, the kids actually told our AP outside that they heard her, that we were listening to them as a school, and that they were excited about that. And so that was in context, one of the conversations I had outside is one of the kids were trying to get the other kids to get in line because they're like, they're listening to us, they're added S for safety. So it's resonating with them at that level, but it's working. Every kid has a data folder. We just self-assessed on that as teachers in our ILT today. So where are we in implementing those with kids? We're trying to slowly roll those out so every kid will have access to their own data, where they're coming, whether it's Dibbles, STAR, math, third grade, or second grade, excuse me, was adding math in. They're in the module assessment. So that's the first thing we're gonna put back in tomorrow. And it's just nice. And so when Dakari comes and tells me he's the mayor and his scores are growing, I know where that's coming from. It's coming from a one-to-one conversation he had with his teacher that they took the time to tell him, because they wanna know. No matter where you're scoring, kids wanna know. They're like little adults that way. If they say, if you're saying my score is 1050, they don't know what the 1050 means on STAR, right? But they know that if I get 5 more points, I'm gonna be at the next level. And so we really wanna hone on the behaviors of what is going to get you those 5 points. So is it taking your time on your test? Adding more minutes? Is it rereading the question? Is it using working paper? So getting them to identify that a behavior can have a positive outcome on their own learning. Let's see, we have RAC Weekly, which is amazing. We've been teaching RAC to follow the implementation of Fidelity in the district, the expectation. And so we do have, once a week, we do have on Tuesdays where every grade level is taught RAC, the Random Acts of Kindness curriculum, to support self-regulation. We have calm down boxes in every classroom now. So we do want to teach kids to self-regulate.
What's a calm down box?
So that's it's a calm down area, I guess I should say, but we provided them all with a box, and then what they did outside the box was their own option. But it's an area where a kid can say, hey, I'm not feeling at my best right now, I need to take a break. Instead of eloping, we had a lot of kids just eloping out of the classroom, running, getting to severely dysregulated before they had that place in that pause, we call it, where they could calm themselves. We need them to calm themselves first and teach them how to take care of themselves so they can learn. If they're not in the classroom, they're not learning. So teaching them how to use the timer and how to follow breathing strategies and just calm themselves down for re-engagement and then get back into their learning. And so I've seen it work in classrooms. The kids will go to the corner, take a little break, watch the timer, and go back and engage. And then it takes that press off the teacher of having to go over there and support that kid in a severely dysregulated situation. And if it is severe, then obviously we'll leave the classroom to support them. But our dean and our assistant principal this year are going in classrooms and really truly supporting teachers one-on-one, side-by-side, helping make phone calls. Our mentor teachers helping make phone calls to parents in those situations, sitting in and listening to them and offering feedback. That's huge. And I've seen teachers coming across from primary now coming into intermediate to seek support from a teacher even before they go to the admin. And so that's that induction program at the heart of its work right there. That's what I feel the value of that is, and it's evident. We're elevating our own students. They're doing announcements now. They're the ones taking the show. So we're trying to tap into their passions and show them that it's not just all just sitting here and being bored and getting in a textbook, right? Like there are options for you and there are ways you can have a passion and find an interest that for yourself. And so student council also, they run a store, kids earn tickets. So just having their voice heard in our school and letting them know that we do hear them. We have Mitchell coming in, they just came yesterday. They come in and they support with kids at recess and they play games with them and they build that partnership, mentorship. And so once we find kids that want to sit with them and eat with them at lunch, we let them do that. And so just having other adults that they feel they can resonate with. We need more adults, right? Because they just want to be loved on like everybody else. And fostering grit. So again, going back to those questions we dug down into and just finding that kids, we want them to take school seriously, want them to take their homework seriously. We have Wolfpack Ready, we call it. So be to school on time, bring your backpack, bring your take-home folder, read 20 minutes a day. That's our ask, be Wolfpack Ready. our outcomes. In our USIP, I just wanna say thank you to the DAC for giving us feedback on this and the tighter alignment between our actions and our root causes and call outs between those two. And so I went in with Sarah and we did fine tune those things, so thank you for the feedback. You can see here that we put a 10% increase in year one on our math scores, and so we had 16.8% of kids scoring at grade level in ELA, and we had 14.4 in math score at grade level. And so increasing those by 10% in year one, and then another 10% in year two. Overall though, our school, what we're working on is DDI, and so myself being included in that, working on my instructional leadership capacity is to improve our data literacy as a school. And so what we're doing through that is really just working on the structures of that, the system of data analysis, getting to the items, setting up our PLCs, getting to the exit tickets through formative assessments. And so really just becoming aware of our actions can just drive by the minute and by every single day matters. We can't wait till the end or wait till an end of unit assessment. So it's a call to action that has to be occurring at the finite daily level. And actually by lesson level. So yeah, our focus is really tier one. We do know that win time and intervention will not save the world, so tier one definitely has gotta be where the biggest bang for our buck is and where we invest our highest stakes for our biggest moves with leverage. And so we are all about that and we're working towards that, get there, and we will get there.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Appreciate your feedback and report to the board. And while you were talking, I think more of your staff members walked into the room as
They're amazing.
well.
Look at them.
So it looks like the whole Wolf Nation is behind that. So now, let's
Your program is amazing.
Okay, you did mention SATAC feedback, and that's something that I'll start with as a comment and open it up for questions from the board as well. I want to thank the DAC and the DAC Accreditation Committee because they took a lot of time and effort. Marian Clausen as the DAC chair and then Courtney Hertner as the DAC Accreditation chair. She has been keeping the board apprised of all the feedback. And I'm just providing it not only to you, but all the other principals, so I'm not repeating this again when the other principals are there. So they put in a lot of time and effort as the board committee. Please look into that feedback that you get from them and try to incorporate it as best as you can as you go through your school improvement plans. Again, thank the whole DAC team for taking the time and energy to deep dive into this plan and provide that feedback. With that, board comments and questions. Director Banks.
Thank you for your information. It was great and comprehensive. The question is on CKLA. Are you in your first year at Adams?
Oh, yes, ma'am, we are.
And it's a lot of material. So can you give us some hint on how it's made more piece by piece as opposed to the whole elephant? How is it that you've approached implementing CKLA so that teachers feel, yes, it's new, but I have a handle on this?
Sure, I think having the embedded coach added is a huge support for our system. And so one of our coaches takes kindergarten and first grade, and then the other one takes second through fifth. And so they divide out that way, and they go to, there's 4 planning sessions a week that teachers go to with their teams. And day 1 of CKLA, the coach goes, and day 1 of math, the coach goes. So on that day 1, we've made a planning agenda. We want to make sure we hit all of those pieces to get through that. And so both of our coaches, have taught CKLA before, so that's huge for us.
That is huge.
It helps a lot. And so I heard a teacher running through the holiday, she was so excited. I said, "What's up?" She's like, "I made my pacing today in CKLA." And so that's a win. Like right now we're focusing on getting through the curriculum and getting through it every day and sticking with it. We have a mantra this year, it's one team, one vision, and stick with it. Because we knew that is it working, they can't trust it yet, we gotta stick with it because they tell us it's gonna work. So it's just continuing to tighten up every day. And they talk a lot about getting skinny but don't skip. So we're not skipping, we're just seeing where we can get tight and where we can expand and work with the kids we have in front of us and what they can and can't do. And so I know there's some frustration and angst if there's no small group, because traditionally that's what we've done, right? And so when there are those days, option 1 and option 2, utilizing those and really trying to use those pause days. So putting them on the calendar of, here's what I'm seeing in class, here's what my assessment says. we went in through the assessments today in 3 of the PLCs, and Mr. Burnley and Ms. Wall walked in with a card. He said, these are the 5 standards that my kids don't know right now on CKLA, and here's the items they don't know on the test. And we went through every single one of those. We were able to debrief on what we could do. So then it's, when do we do that, right? When do we get back in? And so we have to think outside the box of like, well, we have to use when we line up. We have to use the win time, pocket into the win time somehow. So it's really trying to get creative because you only have so much time in the day. So it's how can you get creative to re-engage in a moment you may not have thought could have been the moment, but maybe it is in the lunchroom or it is going down the hall. So we're just trying to maximize every little second.
Thank you.
You good, Director Menkes?
I'm good.
Okay, any other thoughts on it? Dr. Huber?
Can you tell us about a time in the math classrooms where teachers assisted in building student agency, and you've witnessed it, and how students engage with that? Or any of the classrooms, and talk about student agency and how you've witnessed that and how students are participating in that and what they're getting out of that process.
Oh my gosh, yeah. First grade's a great example too. I was in Mr. Butler's classroom the other day and the kids were talking and we send pictures all the time, even at night, of like things that happen in the day. So he had mats out and he had written on the mat, he's teaching them how to have an interdependent task, right? So that's hard for first graders and 5 and 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds to figure out how do they lift as a team. And so he had to scaffold down though and break out each section of the mat, a summarizing thinking mat, and give them a task to do to contribute to the whole. So they all had to solve a problem using a different strategy, but the strategy was identified and the kids, you could see them showing the finger count, the tape diagram, they all had a different strategy and then they were talking about it. And so we have to be very mindful, we can be the delimiter for kids sometimes if we don't let them do the thing. And so even Regina, his teammate, spoke to that about she's amazed every day at what they can do when she lets them do it. And so we are just like, yeah, little people can do hard things.
And then one more question would be, what do you think will be the biggest barrier to your success as a school? And if you feel mid-year that you need that agility, what things are gonna come in right at that moment to say, hey, this is what's gonna happen, because I know they've been talking about agility across the district. So when you say, hey, this isn't going the right way, what is your next step?
I mean, in all honesty, we do have a lot of brand new teachers, right? Like, I didn't learn how to become a teacher, I don't know, I was probably 5 years, and I remember the first kid that taught me my first lesson about how to talk to a kid. Like, I can remember moments where I grew and you grow again and you grow again, right? And so having a new curriculum in year 2 thrown at me or year 1, on top of having the data we might have at the time and maybe the population working through some hard behaviors, I think the hard part might be just making sure I address those teachers' needs immediately and on time. So I met with 4th and 5th grade teachers last week and I asked, what do you need? Assistant principal and Kathy did that and said, what do you need now? I want to know now. We're giving you all this. And sometimes you don't want to overwhelm with all the supports, but I want you to tell me what you need because I want to do it. I want to help you now. And so it could be maybe bringing in some of those district coaches on top of the ones. If they're spread too thin, it's maybe just tapping into some more. I know we brought back some retired teachers. So something like, I think it would be some more of the coaching pieces. Just to, because you gotta be able to, and we talk about this all the time, but agency it works. But when you have kids that we need to elevate content and get scores up, they may not be able to read at the higher level to engage in a task. We have to be able to do those simultaneously to make that magical, really that leap we need to make. So they have to work in tandem together. And we're nailing that agency, but we've got to make sure we understand the content. And so that's hard. That's been hard at every school I've been to. So understanding our standards, digging in, what do kids have to know and be able to do, and then how can I make sure they're able to show me that? And how can I make sure I'm teaching them that, right? Because to focus on the learning, we have to get through all of the harder pieces too and deal with that behavior at the same time. Or the agency lift that we want to make sure we're planning those tasks. And so they're working extremely hard. I love this staff. I love the school. I love the kids. I am proud to be the principal of John Adams Elementary School. And I am so grateful that the district let me do this opportunity and have this because I love every single, these teachers work harder than I've ever seen. Harder than I've ever seen.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions or comments, Director on? And I just want to frame it, we get the 30-minute presentation, your presentation ran a little bit longer, but I do want to give the board the time to, and the opportunity to ask questions. I don't want to skip over that. That's really our oversight and the accountability part of it. Director on.
Thank you.
Sure.
Can you just describe the support you are getting from instructional empowerment? Because you had them there last year, and I realized there was great turnover last year. This year, you have less turnover. How has the support changed? If it has, how are they assisting with development and the structure of the classes?
Sure. We appreciate their partnership greatly. It's truly helping me as an instructional leader become stronger in that regard. And so setting up the board and making sure I'm diligent about where my time is spent, just at the low level of like, let's even look at the calendar, right? And so what we do is we do a rigor appraisal, then we have a 45-day goal based off of that result. And so we decide that as a team. So that's myself, the assistant principal, and the 2 coaches, and then Christy Kenny, the lead of our instructional empowerment. I don't know her exact title, excuse me, but she's just the end all be all with that. So she comes in, we meet about that, then we break that and plan backwards, and we have 2-week sprints. And so right now we're about to wrap up our first sprint. And so that was 70% of classrooms will have standards aligned learning targets posted. And so our next sprint will start next week, and that moves into the teaming tasks, and then we keep going from there. So we start with a large goal, and then we break it down so it's bite-sized chunks and actions that we can meet using our rigor walks. And so she comes in, she was just there yesterday, so we meet, I think it's 12 half days a year total. It's trimmed down a little bit, but she's really trying to build that agency with us to release eventually, and so we are aware of that. But when she comes, we walk classrooms together, she gives me her feedback, she talks me through how to conduct the rigor walk to make sure we're aligned just for that calibration. And we do have the coaching coordinator that works with our 2 coaches. So she comes, watches debriefs, so they'll do a look and learn. Then she goes and then they map out inside of the program on the progression of learning on the debrief, and then they go and they plan that, and then they go administer that with the teacher in a collaborative nature. When the teacher's available, within 48 hours is our goal to get back to them, and then we keep moving through those desired effects. So everything it's very sequential in the way it builds. So it's exciting because you can see our pillar scores are going up in creating the conditions, because it's all about the conditions upon which you can get to that higher level of learning. If kids can do those structures with roles and rules and norms, and our our embedded coaches now, both of them are amazing. If the teachers need a resource, they're brainstorming, how can I tweak this? How can I create this form to make it a little bit more maybe user-friendly for a 5-year-old versus what it looks like for a 5th grader. So we see in the system that we can ask the same thing of kids just at different levels and still trying to push them. And so the coaching is what it's all about. It's really what.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or we're getting some rain outside? Any other comments or questions from the board at this time? Appreciate your feedback. Yeah, I'll come to you. I just want to wrap up something, a couple of things. If you can roll back to that classroom level data that you had, teacher 1, teacher 2. My feedback this is more to the district. This is my 6th year on the board and 8th year for Director Art, and Jason has been here with me as well. I've not seen this type of breakdown right down to the classroom level in any of the past presentations when we've had schools come in front of it. So that level of rigor, it's good that you didn't identify the teacher, but I'm sure you guys know which teacher needs that help and support. But this level of looking at it at the teacher level and directly down to the student level, this is the first time I'm seeing it, so I appreciate you guys providing that type of feedback at that level, and I know that you guys are doing the deep data dive and all those things. A couple of things I do want to give kudos and positives from what I heard, that you are fully staffed this year. That was a big problem a year back or 2 years back. Whenever I visited Adams, there was like a lot of long-term subs at that, and you don't want to ask Superintendent Gall's opinion on long-term subs. He talks about students not wanting long-term subs. And 3rd year in instructional empowerment, and everything that I heard from you is in a positive sense. I can see your passion and the excitement in your voice. In the USIP itself, and this is not just for you, but for all the other principals that are there, just check to make sure that your data and the information is accurate. I'm not going to point out anything specifically, but just review that material to make sure that you have the most updated, accurate information in there. And overall to the district Adams staff that is here, thank you for being here. talk all the time about putting our best teachers and the way we talk about this, the best swimmers in the deepest end of the pool. I've been at Adams. I've seen the challenges that you guys face. It's not the challenges that some of the schools at the northeast or northwest part of our schools face. You deal with a lot more on a daily basis. So you guys have to work overtime to get our students up to proficiency level and closing those gaps. And that's what I see happening when I visit your schools and the classrooms that are happening. So with you moving from operational leadership to instructional leadership, which you mentioned out there, that's going to help support our teachers as well. We look forward to you getting off the state watch list and keep us updated. And one of the things that I would like to see is information that as we go forth and we get the mid-year report and data, that are you progressing in the right direction so that we don't wait till the end of the year to make the changes? We got to make those changes in October and November. That sense of urgency has got to be there. Thank you.
Can I ask one more thing?
Yes, go ahead. Go
Okay, I
ahead.
just wanna note, on the annual, or the action planning that you're actually tracking, I love that. I love that we get to see what you've completed already, what's in progress, and not everybody does that. Looking at you, principals, and some of them have, but I just love being able to see that you are actually keeping track and making progress. Thank you.
Okay, Superintendent.
I'm gonna break some protocol. If you're here from Adams, just stand up, tell us your name and what grade you teach. We'll start over here.
Fifth grade teacher, Trevor Burnley, been there for 15 years with this school group.
Mandy Miller, reading interventionist for second year.
Catherine Malesic, assistant principal, second year.
Wendy Lack, a second year kindergarten.
Woodson Butler, first grade, my second year.
Claire Mahako, fourth grade, 10 years.
Elena Beeler, fourth grade, my first year at Adams.
Kylie Hicks, special education, this is my second year.
Marie Morrow, gifted resource teacher, 4 years.
Annie Pell, Dean of Students, 10 years.
Sarah Bethke, speech language pathologist, 11 years.
Elizabeth Boyne, third grade, second year at Adams.
Heather Bowen, instructional coach, first year at Adams.
Kim Klipner, staff assistant, second year at Adams.
Awesome. Kim, are you the last one? I can't see that.
I believe so, yes.
Awesome. So thank you all. There are countless others, particularly at central office staff, that have leaned in. I hope that what you see in the USIPs that come forward is a lot of alignment to the UDIP and to the prep work we did over the last couple of weeks to show you the things that we're doing differently academically, datally, and area superintendently, I'll make up my own words, to ensure that all these incredible educators get the support that they need. I could think of no better description of who we teach, how we teach, and what we teach than what Carolyn presented here today. It is a triangulation all the time. There are no silver bullets. There is no, if we just move to this, it will be better, right? This idea, yes, we are a CKLA and Eureka curriculum for ELA and for math. We use agency to activate the learning in that space. IE is a partner for us in our schools that have presented the greatest amount of need for us to be able to show that acceleration in the classroom. You all are doing that work, you're exemplifying that if we do implement a strategy well, it can make a difference, and so thank you for being here. I think you avoided large enough hail. It sounded like for a moment there we were gonna have a lot of claim forms, but thank you all for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next presentation, it's going to be Swigert Middle School. Superintendent Gall, I hand it over to you to introduce the principal and looks like we have some Swigert staff out here.
Awesome, we're gonna let them funnel in as well. Thank you all for being here. It's great to have Dr. Cockrell here at the table. Ray and I have known each other here now since my time in the district. And as we had celebrated some of the successes early on of what we heard at Mitchell, I have to acknowledge that Ray gets a lot of the credit for creating this foundation of adult learning in a turnaround school. I can remember when Ray was the assistant principal at Mitchell High School, literally leading PD for the entirety of a high school staff by herself, and for all of those at the secondary level can imagine the challenge of how do you get all departments to agree on really what she was leading towards, this commitment to standard. Ray came into Swigert where we knew we needed a change, and we were excited for that change. And much like you have heard and seen in some of our other schools that have been on the watch list, getting the stability of the staff to then get the staff to believe in the strategy is that critical first part. We had anticipated that Swigert would actually be priority improvement last year. They were not. And Ray was already working on these types of plans without being on the watch list. So although the first time for you, this is really the second time that she has been this deep in what it's going to take to lead differently. We've coined a new term, which is to make middle school sweet again, because when we were on the first day of school and our new sixth graders came into Swigert on the first day of school this year, you saw nothing other than children that were eager to learn, that were invested in being at Swigert, that wanted to be a part of the learning culture. And so we have come up with these ideas of, can we just get the eighth graders to go down and look at how great it would be to be a sixth grader again, if we could go back in time. But I'm super proud of the work that Ray has led and all of the staff to have those sixth graders in a space where they are ready. And we do believe that the culture is right for seventh and eighth grade to be sweet again as well. So over to Ray.
Thank you. I thought you were going to say that the new term you made up was datily. That's gonna catch on. Yeah, so thank you so much for the introduction. I am Ray Cockrell. I am a proud graduate from Tesla High School, D11 schools, product of D11 schools. And I'm a first generation college student who has lived firsthand the promise of public education to break patterns of generational poverty. And I think that's completely relevant to what we're here to talk about today. Jack Swigert Middle School is a Title I middle school in the southeast area that proudly feeds into Mitchell High School. We have 370 students and scholars, and at Jack Swigert Middle School, we believe that every student is capable of achieving and growing at high levels with the proper supports and challenges. And we also believe that every teacher is capable of instruction that fosters that achievement and growth with the proper supports, coaching, learning, and accountability. We know that our students are limited only by the quality of instruction that we provide to them. So, jumping into our story, where we are in our data analysis now. As Superintendent Gall shared, we have dropped, under my first year of leadership, from improvement to priority improvement. I have to own it, and I appreciate the standard that Carolyn set. The principal owns that. Our students did not get the instruction that they needed and deserved in order to get the outcomes that we want to see from them. In my leadership, I made some missteps in my first year, focusing very intensively on coaching and growth, and we certainly have made a lot of progress in our systems in that area, but missing that vital element of ensuring that we're focused on student outcomes as the purpose and the be-all, end-all of the coaching, not only on the teacher supports and growth of the teachers. We provided a lot of feedback and coaching to our teachers, but not yet acted quickly enough to really restructure our approaches and think bigger and really just hit pause and change everything as needed to get the results that we needed. Some context, in my first year of leadership coming in last year at the beginning of the year, over 80% of our licensed staff turned over. And so in a lot of ways, we were a new school with some die-hard folks who have hung on through the changes and are here to support tonight. The majority of our new teachers are first and second year alternative licensure teachers. And so that's been some of the context of the learning and coaching, that we have a lot of folks who've taken that courageous leap into a new career in instruction. So I'll share implications for moving forward in the data that you'll hear me speak to, really restructuring the way we're supporting instruction and focusing on student data in a daily, granular, tightly focused way to the standard and student, to ensure that every student's getting the quality of instruction that they deserve. So the high-level school performance framework results and takeaway, you can see in the bottom right, this is the shift from 2024 to 2025, a drop from improvement to priority improvement. The bottom line is, the takeaway is that we have very urgent work to do. And the deeper story behind that is the opportunity that we're seeing in each of these areas. In achievement, the top half of the SPF that you see there, we have not met achievement expectations in any areas. In growth, which is the bottom half, we have met expectations in only one area, which is our English language on track to proficiency for our multilingual learners. So the big picture tells the story about the urgency of the work ahead, and the opportunity, but I want to break this down and get deeper into looking at specific standards, specific teachers, specific students, as we are moving forward. So you can see some classroom level data here. This is our growth data, our MGP, median growth percentile by teacher. And you can see on the right, our CMAS data shows an MGP of 29 for English language arts and of 36 for math. It is not meeting the goal to hit 50, right? Carolyn speak to that. That simply means you're middle of the pack in terms of getting 1 year's growth in 1 year's time. We know to close the gaps that we need to close, we need to see mid-60s for MPs. So you can see out of 10 teachers that none of them hit that target. None of our classrooms yet achieved in English or math at the level needed, and 8 out of 10 qualify for intensive coaching and support based on having an MGP under 40. These growth numbers make it clear that our students aren't catching up fast enough, so we want to take a look at the overall achievement data as well as the growth data here. So there's a danger when we speak in percentages, as you'll see on this slide. I mean, we've seen that English language arts grew 1% in well below, right? And percent passing grew by 1%. Essentially, it's flat, right? That our achievement remains flat. But there's a danger when we speak in percentages that we might forget to acknowledge that every one of these children that's part of this percentage is someone's precious child. And we speak about that in our school and keep that in mind as we are looking at data. So the big picture trends in English and math show that it is flat, and the question for us becomes, what must we do differently to change this trajectory? So we're moving into our formative data here, and you can see our STAR benchmark assessments beginning, middle, and end of year over time. We've seen a decline over time from fall 23-24 to fall 25-26 in English, and math is significantly lower in performance than our reading scores are. There's a persistent achievement gap there in the math to reading score of 10 plus percentage points. However, I do want to call out, we've bucked a trend that I understand to be a sort of district-wide trend that we're going to see some loss from spring to fall. This year, we have some early indicators that some of our work around agency is taking root because we are now seeing upward motion here in the fall. So to really fully understand the picture, it's not only our academic data, right, but our culture and climate data as well. This 5 Essentials data is very important to us because it speaks to our students, our parents, and our teachers' perceptions about the learning environment. So you can see that we have a data gap in 2024. Unfortunately, prior to my being hired, there was not enough participation in the survey in any group to get any data. In 2025, we definitely saw a rebound with strong emphasis and focus there. 98% of our teachers completed this survey to give us their feedback. We know that a red category is a barrier to improvement. It's the lowest possible rating, and a consistently red category is a lower likelihood of us improving in academics. And we do have, you'll see over time, a consistently red category, which is supportive environment. So I want to speak to that for just a moment because we're talking about our focus on student agency and the importance of student voice and experience. Because supportive environment, our lowest measure is a student response. And so this is our students telling us what we must address. Our highest element and highest measure, ambitious instruction, our highest element measure within that element is also a student response. And that's about the quality of math instruction. And the score was 83, which is very strong. And so I see that as an early indicator that we're seeing that growth area in collaborative teachers and ambitious instruction and the focus on instruction that we've leaned in on. However, we know that from the voice of our students that we absolutely must continue to focus on supportive environment and connection. And I will, before the end of this presentation, speak to many of the changes already underway for that. So this slide really shows you the shift. It's the sort of breadcrumb trail, right? From the really big picture data all the way down to the more precise, specific data points where we start looking at what's happening for individual teachers, individual students, and how they're performing on individual classes. So you'll see at the CMAS level, what we're seeing in the big state data is low achievement and growth. And the need for much more rapid instructional pivots, where we're talking about moving into the data. And then the district benchmark is what's really led us to understand we must seek more data and we must seek it sooner to make more decisions through data-driven instruction. And so we have leaned in all hands on deck in terms of Amplify, Eureka, and making sure that we're leveraging the quality curricular resources we have to use standards-based curriculum, standards-based assessments to inform our planning and learning as a staff, and to use that data to empower students themselves to own their own learning. Our formative assessment data, I also want to just call out that we are leaning in on a very much tighter focus on short cycle data checks to the point of looking at daily exit tickets within professional learning communities, identifying the gap, what is the misconception, what's the gap between the exemplar and the student data that we are seeding, and addressing it quickly. We really are seeing, in a few instances, we're seeing teachers getting tightly into that in a way that's leading into actually addressing that in the moment in instruction, not waiting until I take those exit tickets to PLC or take that student work to my data meeting, but actually saying, hang on, pause, I'm noticing a theme, eyes up, we're all going to address this here in class. And that is the goal. So I want to talk about the actions that we are taking in response. Our first major improvement strategy is about cultivating student agency through data-driven instruction, empowering students and teachers alike by ensuring that our instructional decisions are happening in the moment, not after it's too late, not after we've already created or reinforced a gap. So key actions include really focusing our professional learning opportunities around both data-driven instruction and student agency, teaching for student agency. We have converted all staff meeting time to professional learning time. So this morning at from 7 to 8 a.m., my staff was engaged in professional learning around student agency. And what happens in the brain when we engage students through teaming and how that relates to the instructional moves that they are making. We're also using formative assessments much more tightly. I heard Carolyn speak to the pacing guides that we have in place, but we're also tightening up in terms of following back up after we've made an adjustment, if we've planned to reteach, and then reassessing that as part of the next day's exit ticket as well. Did we get where we needed to go with our students? Are we seeing the shift in their learning? So increasing fidelity of that standards-aligned curriculum. I've heard Superintendent Gall say repeatedly, it's not the curriculum, it's how you use it, it's how you implement it, and knowing that we're leveraging it for student data with a lens of agency and student teaming is key. So I also want to speak to the way we've begun a partnership with Instructional Empowerment. We are very excited. We've heard the testimonials. We got to hear teachers from Mitchell High School come speak about their misgivings at first and then what their experience was. And those are our students and our families. And we know if it works there, right, it's going to work here. We've already seen a great deal of energy around this. We have 10 staff members who attended an early adopter training on September 11th, and the rest of our staff will be taking that MOI 101, the Model of Instruction 101 training on October 10th, upcoming Teacher Workday. So much dedication to getting that on board, so much understanding of the urgency of building that student agency, that they are willing to work together to figure out how we can make that work for a Teacher Workday. So data and agency both really working together to empower students and teachers to act immediately in the learning process. Last little tidbit I would add here about MIS1 is a thank you in terms of the shifts that we've seen around strategic staffing, around budgeting and resource allocation. We were able to change the way that we were staffing our school. I have 2 fabulous instructional coaches, 2 fabulous assistant principals, and they are in PLC. They are lead learners in our building, modeling that and in classrooms every day and supporting teachers who are showing some emerging promise to themselves become model teachers with model classrooms in time. Our second major improvement strategy is about building stronger systems of support and accountability, but again, there's a tie to data and timelines. This is about getting students identified who need support much more rapidly and getting supports in place in a more agile, quickly pivoting model. And so we've really leaned in around the work around the middle school accountability system to guide our work for MTSS this year, using that tight timeline to rapidly identify and to get students the support that they need quickly. And to get parents and students involved in identifying the supports that are working and at the table in figuring out what's not working and how we can move forward. The goal is absolutely to continue to develop student agency and parent and family agency as partners in the work because we know when our students own their own learning that they will continue to accomplish things that we might not even have imagined for them. So integrating the middle school accountability system into our MTSS system has resulted in students' data no longer being monitored, but instead that students are being engaged and empowered with their data in the system. Ultimately, the measure of our success will be the outcomes, right? It will be the student outcomes, but it will also be the shifted adult practice that cultivates the student outcomes. And so we are looking at both. We are excited that we have our first rigor walk coming up with instructional empowerment in October. We are excited to learn And I will just say that I have already learned a great deal just from the resources in the initial coaching visit. And it is having a great impact, the energy of the change that we're seeing in our building and our leaders and our students who are very excited about this work. So the key pieces I would call out in terms of outcomes, there's the teacher side, fidelity to the assessments, right, and the curriculum and the timelines. But the student side is seeing those improved outcomes for students and seeing them in a tighter timeline. So decreasing the number of students who are eligible for the accountability system and increasing the number of students who are demonstrating mastery on their standards aligned formative assessments in their classes daily and weekly. And then also really leaning into student and teacher owned goal setting for those learning outcomes and having students help us set the goals that they want to achieve as we move forward. My closing thought for this slide is really that when we see whether the outcomes are working, it's whether students are gaining agency. So all of the data we just reviewed should look different as we move forward, but we know that we need a much sooner data point, not waiting till mid-year benchmark data, right? So we have end of module assessments underway, ready to go in Eureka and Amplify coming up end of this week, early next week across different grade levels, different times for different grade levels. But we are very excited to see the data that we have from students in the system. I also just wanted to close with a quick couple of thank yous. So thank you to the board, specifically Director Carey and Director Hafley for supporting, Vice President Hafley for supporting the work around the middle school accountability system and the thought partnership and guidance that you offered when we discussed that, because it ended up, what the learning and the discussion ended up back with our school accountability committee, with our families, and into our unified improvement plan. And so thank you for that. I also want to thank the DAC, Marion Clausen specifically, for the feedback they gave, really detailed feedback on our action plans, which are living documents, as you shared, specifically about how we're tying students in on how we're using that data and pivoting based on their data. And that brought us back to our MI2 for students to be able to get out of that accountability system in shorter cycles and demonstrate that growth. So I will leave it there for questions.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your feedback and all of you that I hear from Swigert. Open it up for comments and questions from the board. Director Mack is your first.
I'm having trouble filling the gap between the wonderful attendance you had at the open house. I mean, I got the last parking space as.
There was no Kona ice left by the time you got there.
That's true too. So when I look at your 5E and we're talking about supportive environment, when I watch kids or notice kids helping each other find classrooms for parents of their friends or whatever, the patience at which parents were lined up so that they could get the schedule so they knew where they were going, and the others being shifted off because they had 2 years in that school. So it seems to me a gap between this supportive environment and what I actually saw on open house. And I know that having it so well attended speaks well for the fact that people feel comfortable coming to school. Parents feel comfortable coming to school. And in addition to that, if you did note it in here, I didn't see it, your English language learners, because I was in conversation, I was in a room with, the student was interpreting for mom, and mom was interested. So what is your English language population in percentages or numbers, whatever?
Yeah, thank you. So we have, I don't want to misspeak. I'll speak in general terms
Yes,
as far as that goes. So I'll address the second question first. So we have a quarter of our students are receiving multilingual learner services. So they are on plans, language learner plans. More than that, we get closer to the 30 to 40% range, have been on plans. So we have students who are considered fully English proficient or have exited the program and are being monitored but not actively receiving services other than monitoring. So a very large population. And are on track to English language proficiency. That's going to be the students who are taking the WIDA Access test in January of each year. And so it's a specific group of students that's representing the students who are actively receiving those services and qualifying for them at that time. I appreciate that.
Having said that, I want to acknowledge the heavy lift that you have in bridging that gap, because when folks have not been exposed to public education here, they don't have experience on which they can draw to feel comfortable or to know how to participate or be able to be a partner with their child to set goals other than I'm going to send my child to school. And I don't want to overgeneralize, but I think I want to acknowledge how well you and your staff have reached out, because as I've said, you were well attended on open house and people wouldn't come if they didn't feel welcome. And in the classrooms, kids are talking to teachers, teachers are talking to parents, there's dialogue going on, conversations going on. So congratulations to you and to your staff for making it such a welcoming environment for people to come.
Thank you. Thank you for being there and thank you for coming to see that. And I would just share that those supportive environment questions, we're seeing the agency work directly targeting that as well, because students are asked questions. In the survey, we have a teacher team who's doing a deep dive in that right now and taking action for it. But some of the questions include questions like, my peers believe it's important to do well in the classroom. I trust my teacher to keep their word. So really thinking at that level of what relationships are we building, and those student to student relationships in the classroom matter. It's not only the adult to student relationships, and so that empowerment work we believe will help target that a great deal.
Thank you.
And having said that, can you speak to behavior in the building? Middle school can sometimes be an opportunity for students to have freedom that they haven't had before, and at the same time our job is to make sure the guardrails are in place so that they understand how they can be who they want to be, and yet they have to live in a community.
Yeah, I appreciate that. My philosophy is that discipline is about learning first and foremost, that it is education. And so when we, as you shared, the first time I've had this level of freedom, then maybe I make a mistake with it, or maybe I make a choice that isn't actually representative of who I am as a person or who I'm going to become, right? We always, first and foremost, safety, absolutely. But then what can we learn from this? And sometimes we do learn from consequences, but also what else can be learned by the community, by the individual? How can we come back, process this together, and always reentry with the idea of we're coming back into this situation, we've had a conversation, I've reflected on what I will do differently next time. And so I think that's the most important thing for me, right, that we think about, especially at the middle school level, right, that this is an opportunity for learning and growth for all involved, me too, many times.
Thank you.
Thank you. According to the CDE website, your multilingual learners is 28.5%. So you were really close to
Thanks.
what you said.
I was gonna throw out some numbers and hope. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Director Rock, and I'll come to you.
Okay. I want to say thanks to you all too for having tracking in your action planning document. Just one slide back on slide 10, there's a bullet. The third one, increased accountability for students not meeting expectations in math and reading. What does that look like?
Yeah, thank you. So that speaks directly, and I think I left a word out there. I think it should say increased support and accountability. So I'm balancing those two, but that speaks directly to the middle school accountability system so that we know we've got those triggers, those tight timeline triggers with the support of Dr. Koliki's team and the data that we're running. We know this isn't working for the student. Right now, we have students who have had their initial meetings with administration, with counselors saying, hey, you're in the system because this is what we're doing to support you. Here's where we're having groups every week with your counselor, where you're meeting, having check-ins, we're setting goals, we're working on executive functioning skills, how you learn in the classroom, how you engage, so support, but also accountability. There are privileges that you may not get if you're not on track. And so we have had those conversations as well. And it's the motivator that we're gonna get you out of this system and you're not going to stay in this system all year.
Thanks. I have a couple other questions and I'll just follow up with email.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Dr. Huber.
I noticed your focus on these formative assessments, and the question would be, is the battery of material aligned to those standards? I know the teachers are coming in and they're newer and they're working on how do I get students engaged, how do I work on these literacy pieces, how am I handling classroom management, but it might also be a heavy lift to say at the same time, let's create these. So is there a battery for them to choose from? If they're struggling in developing that, what kind of supports do they have to come in on these standards and have those ready to go for those types of assessments?
Thank you. It's an insightful question. There is a lot that we're coaching around, right? So there are a couple of things happening there. One, our learning as a leadership team, my instructional leadership team is here, I keep motioning in their direction. Our learning is also about how are we leveraging our curricular resources to the highest level? What's in the curriculum? What also can we pull in to utilize? We've learned a lot. We had the opportunity to learn from Paul Bambrick-Santoyo, who wrote Driven by Data 2.0. We have studied this book together as a team. We've learned a lot about how we can pull on existing resources, but we also have learned a lot about narrowing the focus. So we don't want to ask more questions, we want to ask the right questions. And a lot of that is just being super selective with the standard in front of us and focusing on that as teachers in our data team. We also have pivoted already this year with the area superintendent support, the chief support, the curriculum and academics team support to bring in extra levels of coaching for those areas of need where we're coaching on many different fronts. So that we can stay very focused in our PLC and data work to make sure that we're bringing that around to the learning, but we also have support in the classroom, whether it's school embedded, district embedded coaches, teachers coaching teachers, or we're also bringing in instructional empowerment, additional layers of coaching for our coaches. So attacking it on both sides. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Dr. Kelly.
You had mentioned kind of near the beginning that last year you actually did do quite a bit of coaching, but that you felt like your coaching was misdirected or misallocated and not sufficiently focused on student outcomes. Can you just say a little more about what you think went wrong last year and what you're doing differently this year with respect to coaching?
Absolutely, thank you. I believe we did a lot right last year in terms of getting a system in place where we have a weekly meeting as our coaching team where we discuss every single teacher and their needs that week and what coaching touch points will happen. And it's really tiered based on needs. So you might have one coaching touch point or you might have 5 coaching touch points depending on what's going on that week. But what we didn't do yet was to really get tight on how we were using student data, formative data, daily data to drive the coaching and to evaluate the effectiveness of the coaching. We were focusing on teacher practice and missing many pieces of the student outcome because we were waiting to see that end of module assessment data or we were waiting to see the mid-year data and not getting tight with our timelines. Does that answer what you're?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I'll jump in to also reset to the different way we're thinking about the academic team. Last year, coaching was on Ray. And so we are always limited by the capacity of any one person that is ultimately responsible for a team. And so now Ray is an instrument in how it is that we coach instruction, not just at Swigert, but how we do this for every one of our principals at every one of our schools. So we want to get out of this cycle of, I hope you believe in the quality of the principle that we put forth in front of you, and we'll measure it again in August when the results come out. And so as you will see, as we've committed to the work actually Dr. Carey, that you've led for the board on this way that we are communicating our academic metrics more tightly and more consistently with more focus on what the expectation of those outcomes are. Every principal should be feeling that there is coaching and then the enormity of all of the district behind it to support them. When you go back to Director Bankes's question on the leading and lagging nature of 5E, you could argue that either way. I have never seen all gray. It's the first time I have seen an entire community say, we are not going to participate. If we're looking for words, that's my word. We have a little joke on who stumbles on what words. The entirety of the instructional community said, we will not participate in this trodden and shared way that our district has used in the past. So not only starting from all red or red and orange, starting from I am so divested from what you're trying to do, I won't even give you my feedback. And so that's a very tough place to coach from, which is how do you come into that space. I appreciate the structures that you put in place, but now there's depth into how that's happening. And it's not just on the incredible strength of a leader and the team that showed up here, but it's now the power of the district to come after it and get it. As goes, we used to say Mitchell, but as goes any one of our schools that's on the turnaround list, goes District 11. We have to have a guarantee to access to high quality instruction. It cannot be limited by second-year principal, doing a great job as a second-year principal. But a kid should never, show up at 40 years old and say, well, the reason I never actually got to access the middle class was I had a second-year principal in my 7th and 8th grade, and I went to a turnaround school for 9th and 10th grade, and then my parents made a different choice, or maybe I had a change in my home life. We have to say that your tax base gets you access to high quality instruction, regardless of what zip code you're in, what neighborhood you're in, or who is the teacher of record or the principal. And we've done that now. And yes, we have work to do to be able to prove that. But the difference is it's not just Ray and her ability to provide an observation cycle. The other thing that's hard with that is remember that the state actually holds the principal accountable to the evaluation of their staff. And it's very difficult to be both a coach, a cheerleader, a champion, a counselor, and then ultimately the evaluator. Because as soon as you get to that space that you actually have to say, Ray has to say to Ms. Callback, you're not meeting expectation. It is human nature for Ms. Callback to say, I'm not really sure I'm taking these as coaching and observations anymore. They now become critical feedback. We have systems behind that that'll now come in that says, I know the oxymoron, hi, I'm from central office and I'm here to help. But this is the year that when you get a visit from central office, they are actually there to help. So I appreciate the clarity in the question. The cycle is tighter and the number of and differentiation of touch point is deeper and more specific to the need, not just dependent upon the strength of the individual leader in the building.
Great, thank you. Everything that we heard from you and from Superintendent Gall, it's giving us optimism that the school is moving in the right direction. Is there anything that you need from the board at this time, other than what we've already heard, that you are an instructional empowerment school, so that's the first year that you are doing this. Anything else that we should know at this time?
I would humbly ask that this board engage in conversation with Superintendent Gall around opportunities for centralized hiring. In the Southeast area schools, we don't always have the same level of access to candidates, and that's something that could be a game changer for Swaggart and our area network schools.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that feedback. We'll take that into consideration as we go forth. Just summarizing, I did take a deep look at your data over the weekend. Some of your mean scores dropped significantly from last year. So this gives you an opportunity. If you are at the bottom, this gives you an opportunity. The only way is to go up. So it gives you an opportunity to increase your growth scores, your achievement scores for this upcoming year. The plan is in place, the supports and systems are in place. So I wish you the best, and we look forward to visiting your schools and having an opportunity to be in your classrooms as well. Thank you. Yeah.
I'd love to, again, to do what we did with our last school. If Swaggart folks can stand up. Just tell you who you are and what you do for us at Swaggart. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm Adrienne Ryland. I'm one of the assistant principals. It's my second year there.
I'm Heather Ulrich. I'm the other assistant principal, and it's my first year here.
Fred Segura, I'm one of the instructional coaches, my first year here.
Erin Stuyvesant, administrative assistant, 11th year, as well as a parent of a Swagger student.
Awesome.
Mimi Tomerlin, math teacher, it's my 3rd year.
Great.
Anthony and
And how about our students?
Students too.
Austin's out there doing homework.
Doing homework.
I have one in the hall doing homework. Introduce yourself.
I'm Anthony, and I'm a student at Jen Swagger and a son of Aaron.
Awesome. Thank you. What grade are you in?
8th grade.
Awesome. Thank you.
Nice.
Your future principal would love to have a conversation with you about what his expectations are right there. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
So board, we have one more school to consider at this time, Wilson. We've been about 2 hours into this. Do you want to take a break at this time, or do you want to continue with the Wilson? Continue? Okay, great. Okay, invite the principal that is joining us, Superintendent Gall. I will ask you to introduce the principal and then.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have Sheridan here. Sheridan is now entering her 3rd year in the system. I'm really proud of the work of her resume that brought her here to District 11. I think we came into Wilson coming onto the list as a bit of a surprise. Sheridan has really done what I call that groundwork of building a strong culture, having the systems in place. What we really have here, and I don't want to steal Sheridan's thunder, is we just didn't pay attention to where we know we saw risks and challenges in the building fast enough. In our K-12 lead meeting last week, we shared a similar slide that I shared with the board last week on the number of days that are represented in each quarter. We are now 13% of the way through the academic year already, and we are only halfway through September. And so by the time Sheridan started making really strong investments in turning some things around, we were well below 40 days left until testing, and it just wasn't enough at the time to be able to make that gap. But Sheridan has been here before, and not in District 11, but in another district, proven that when the going gets tough, Sheridan and all of Wilson will get going. And so here's an opportunity for you to meet Sheridan in a very intimate and personal way. And Sheridan, over to you.
Thank you so much. Sheridan Hirsch, principal of Wilson Elementary. Wilson Elementary is a school in the southeast area of the district, Title I school with about 300 students. In my time at Wilson, I've been able to build upon a really strong foundation of community supports and work to leverage that to support with student engagement. We've got a pretty strong, stable, committed staff at Wilson that is really just working on what are the instructional strategies that are going to move us forward. But an exciting piece this year is we also have a core group of new and really highly engaged staff members in key areas that are also going to drive the work forward. Shout out to my Wilson team who's here tonight. We had a couple people who had to leave, but I know there's people watching as well. So good to see you, and thank you for your support. So, all right. I want to start this presentation with really echoing what Superintendent Gall said. I take ownership for our data moving forward and really want to talk about how we're going to respond and improve this data. It's clear that I didn't act with enough finality and enough urgency to deliver what our students needed to be successful, especially, as I'll detail more in a moment, a specifically challenging and crucial grade level band. That's my mistake to own, but it shouldn't impact our students and the experiences that they have at Wilson or any other D11 school moving forward. So as we continue our presentation this evening, I'll detail what our specific missteps were, as well as how we're going to move the needle for our students to make sure that we have vastly improved outcomes for our students. This slide details our current SPF, and Wilson in the past, like many similar schools, has gained a lot of points on the SPF from that growth area, right? When you're looking at a SPF that hinges highly on points from growth, when you have those growth points coming from just 4th and 5th grade, right? And in a smaller school, things can unfortunately swing in a negative direction when you're not seeing high growth scores from those specific grade level bands, right? It's important to see high growth scores in all areas, and then when you have a score that really tips the needle, you can see a swing like we did here at Wilson. I'll talk more in the next slide again around specific teacher growth scores and where that kind of leveled out, but I do want to point out a couple of positives on this slide. We're really, really close to being out of turnaround completely. I think we're around 1 point of being out of turnaround. Of course, this is not a place we want to be, but it is encouraging to know that especially in our areas around our math growth and our English language arts growth, we are very close to moving on to the next category and gaining some significant points towards our SPF. That equates to about 10 and 12 students to move in 4th and 5th grade into the next performance level band. We're going to do that and more at Wilson because our students deserve more than that, but it is encouraging to know that like that's the work that is really going to move us forward in this kind of SPF format. Another exciting piece is really around the multilingual learners aspect. We did have a NEETS growth score for our multilingual learners in our reading test. That is a shift from the district trend, as Andy Swanson said, kind of something different that we're seeing that's not in line with the district. So it's an exciting piece that we want to continue to capture and grow for our students at Wilson. I think when I'm looking at our SPF, of course that achievement is a huge area of concern for me, but where I think and where I know we gave up the most points from our SPF to last year to this year is around our math growth. We've got to act urgently to support our math growth to ensure that we are moving the needle forward for our students. This slide details some specific teacher MGPs of concern, and I think this highlights what I was speaking about when you have some MGPs that are really just unacceptably low, right? When you've got MGPs in the 15 and 14, it's really hard to account for that when you have other MGPs in the 50s and 60s, right? We've got to make sure that our students have a consistent level of growth across all classrooms at Wilson. I am excited to share, based on this slide, that the teachers who are remaining at Wilson in a CMAS testing grade this year have average MGPs from 51 to 71. So we're starting this year in a much better space. However, we know we cannot wait to act. We must act urgently to ensure that our scores grow and continue to translate towards that achievement for our students. Here you can see where we sit as far as color band division at Wilson with both ELA and math and our performance. We began this year presenting this data to our staff, and we really did some deep reflection around what this means for our students at Wilson and our teaching practices. We absolutely, as I detailed on our previous slide, need solid growth scores to support the growth of our students, but our students deserve a high level of proficiency leaving Wilson. That led us as a staff to really think about how do we set our sights on achievement and proficiency versus setting our sights consistently on growth, right? We know that with achievement, when we increase our achievement, growth is inherent in that work, right? But setting our sights and our conversation on what is the bar for 4th grade, what is the bar for 5th grade, and how do we move our students to that achievement level is the conversation driving the work at Wilson. We see many of our students in that yellow and orange area, which tells us that we can move those students to that green band with access to high quality tier 1 instruction on a consistent basis, right? We do have some significant students in the red, so we talked as a staff around how do we ensure that our tier 1 instruction is very supportive of those students who are able to access, and then how do we work to give those students scoring in the red level of proficiency urgent intervention at a time separate from the precious time that is tier 1 instruction to be able to access the high quality grade level instruction. Our intervention work is about accessing our tier 1 instruction, and those two things lead together to support our students. Research has shown over and over that the best way to close gaps at schools such as Wilson is to really focus on tier 1, grade level, high quality instruction. The way that we move access forward and ensure that that's in every space for Wilson is around consistent teacher feedback with supports to implement it. I'll talk more about that in a moment. Here you can see our STAR ELA and math proficiency levels over time. You know, I look at this and I see maybe a slight increase over time. I see, you know, a little bit of up and down here and there, but my takeaway from this slide is really that our proficiency needs to be the focus at Wilson. We have not increased our proficiency fast enough or with enough urgency to support our students as they move throughout the system here in D11. Our students can deserve a really strong base of proficiency as they move forward, and we want to work to urgently improve this. This data, to me, cements the other work we've done at Wilson. Taking a look at our 5E culture and climate data, Over the past couple of years, we've had some areas that have bounced around, some areas of improvement, but really looking at this last year, I presented this data to staff in May, and it was very interesting to dig into because the areas of ambitious instruction and supportive environment decreased. When you dig into the items that our 5E survey is asking, and as you know, this is given to teachers and this is given to our 4th and 5th grade students, right? As you dig into the specific items around ambitious instruction and supportive environment, the teacher responded items stayed stagnant or increased. Our student responded items in 4th and 5th grade was where we saw the decrease happen that led us to this result. I don't think it's an accident that our 4th and 5th grade students, some or many of which who were in an underperforming classroom, reported that ambitious instruction and a supportive environment were a concern for them, right? To me, that echoes the academic data we're seeing, and our goal is to how do we support those two areas specifically so that we know the environment's right and it can really tie into our academic achievement. Our staff was alarmed by this data and really worked to understand how the environment we had created was maybe not what our students were reporting or experiencing, especially in those 4th and 5th grade level bands. I had a staff member who I know is watching at home say, our students are reporting that we're not pushing them to achieve. We're in charge of that. That's our data. How do we take ownership of that? And to me, that anecdote really speaks to the culture of ownership and distributed leadership that we're working to build at Wilson. These are our students, this is our data, and how do we support them with moving forward? Speaking just a little bit about what we're doing to tackle both of these areas, really thinking about agency and curriculum use as a focus to respond to that ambitious instruction area, and then overall work on classroom culture, belonging to respond to that supportive environment area. All right, summary of our current state, observations and challenges. Our CMAS data has both low achievement and low growth at this time, so that leads us to know that we need to act urgently and differently to support our students. We must ensure that we continue a focus on math because we had lower math growth than we did our reading growth. We know, everyone at this table knows we have a new reading curriculum, right? So how do we ensure that we keep a focus on our growth in math, even when that reading curriculum does take some energy to implement? So we want to make sure that we're really focused on math as well. Our formative assessments throughout our year really need to show a higher and more consistent proficiency level in STAR so that can continue to translate to CMAS. We need to respond to that data. But we cannot wait till our STAR data comes out. We must drive that work through real-time micro adjustments for staff every day. And I'm going to go into much detail on that in a moment. We can't wait till end of module data, end of week data. We must act in classrooms as we see adjustments that need to be made. As I talked about, our 5E data shows a concerning disconnect between our teachers and our students, really indicating a need for a strong response to ensure belonging and that our environment is able to work together with our curriculum and the other resources to support student achievement. I think about the levers that are going to be really important for Wilson this year, and the two that stick out to me are our coaching supports and our strategic staffing. When I mean strategic staffing here, I mean, have I hired the right people? Are they in the right spots? And I have trained them and supported them in a way that supports their growth. Coaching supports are really where then we can come in and ensure that we see some really high level growth from our teachers for this year. A little bit about how that looks in our major improvement strategy. Our action plans are very in-depth. I will not kind of lead you through all of that, but I really want to give you examples around the first two items. And shout out to the DAC committee for helping me really understand what this looks like in a major improvement strategy action plan. So our AP, my AP and I, we calendar 50% of our time each week to be in classrooms. We do this work alongside each other to make sure that we're normed on what we're seeing and looking for in each classroom. We give feedback to every teacher at least weekly. That can be in person once their instruction stops and they're circulating. I give them a coaching point. I ask them to implement it. We see the culture or the mood of that room shift and the engagement of that room shift. Or if they're still instructing, I'm not interrupting, I'm coming back to them at a later date and having an in-person conversation, right? So those are those really short cycle coaching cycles, so immediate feedback, because again, we cannot wait. We cannot wait till the end of the lesson. We cannot wait till the end of the week. We need to support our teachers in the moment with supporting our teachers. But alongside those take place longer coaching cycles, right? We know that those longer, more focused coaching cycles where teachers can work on a consistent goal over time, either with our school embedded coach or a district embedded coach, really focus on building a teacher's competency in the areas that they need support in. So both of those things are happening alongside each other, those short cycle coaching cycles and then those longer cycle coaching cycles. We have our all CMAS teachers on a longer coaching cycle already, like starting there and continuing there as long as we need to, but also working to expand that work out. But as I mentioned, every teacher in the building is getting weekly feedback and immediate instructable, like implementable feedback. Couple of examples from just the past week that really lit me up around this work, because this is truly the work that's going to move us forward. Sherry and I actually visited a reading block in 4th grade, and I was able to, she was delivering a CKLA lesson, and I gave the teacher some in-the-moment real-time feedback around an engagement strategy that I would like her to try. She said, I'm not sure how to do that, right? It was a great moment of, I'm not sure to do that, how to do that. I said, thank you, can I please model that for you, right? So I was able to model that engagement strategy in the moment. The teacher was able to feel the engagement shift dramatically throughout her classroom. And then I was able to close the loop with her and say, practice that strategy, work through that strategy, and I'll come back to see it next time with you, right? So that immediate work of seeing the classroom shift with more engagement and more focus and immediately improved outcomes for students. Just this Monday, I got to go see a new teacher in 5th grade. She's actually a leader in agency cohort member. She's opted into that. She's showing a lot of leadership in our building already. And they were doing a math lesson around creating word problems for multi-step algebraic equations, right? So the students were really working to understand what does this equation mean, and I'm gonna make a word problem to get to that equation. Students were having a very collaborative and engaged discussion at their tables, talking about what these word problems would look like, and then jumping out of their seats to try to get this teacher to call on them to share out what their word problem was. And this was especially impactful when I speak about these 5th graders. These are the 5th graders that really did have a suboptimal year last year with their growth, right? And to see them engaged authentically in a very high-level math lesson was so exciting. So I was able to get my phone and do some great videos that I can use to support with PD or coaching moving forward, because we need to show that this work can happen at Wilson with our students and really work to spread those quality practices throughout the building. My last little story here is our district coach is working with some teachers on some specific strategies. It's been really helpful to have her in the building, and she has an existing relationship with our teachers. She was able to meet with a 5th grade teacher, stop by and say, hey, I talked with this teacher about this, this, and this. I want your support in helping her implement that as this coaching cycle continues to move forward. We were able to go the next day into that teacher's classroom, knowing what we were looking for, these 3 strategies, identify where those were going well, and give her some real-time feedback around one of the specific strategies that we were hoping she would, move forward with a little bit faster. And then able to say to our district coach, hey, we saw this, this, and this, we want to continue to work on this. So closing the gap, both in those short cycles and those long cycles around the feedback to our teachers. And just keeping that through line really consistent. So in summary, we're just really excited about the work that's happening already at Wilson this year. We are ensuring that teachers get timely feedback as well as like that long-term, longer coaching support. Action on our data is already well underway and continuing to move forward. This work is going to lead to significant increases in growth and achievement at Wilson. Because we're acting swiftly, we're modeling and pushing urgency for our staff and our students, and we're ensuring that all students have access to high quality instruction every day. What I want to communicate to you and as well as my staff is that we can't afford to slow down or settle for what has been or what we've already achieved as a school. Our students deserve more. They deserve a lot more, and it's our responsibility to deliver. And moving forward, the message to staff and you all is that 50 MGP is the beginning, not the goal. So I thank you for your time tonight and happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, appreciate it. I like the last sentence that you had out there. 50 MGP is not the beginning, it's the beginning, not the goal. Board, I'll come to Director Bankus and then to you, Director Bankus.
I just wanted to call out and say how much I appreciated when you were talking about goal setting, and when you said you were going to concentrate on not only growth but academics, and then broke it down. We're only talking 10 or 12 students out of a whole school. It's like, oh, these are the kids in another way without that analysis would be sliding maybe through the cracks. So thank you to you and your staff for making sure that It's not this whole big picture that has to be tackled. We need to continue what we're doing, and yet we need to bring along these 10 to 12. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Director Jurgens.
You mentioned multiple times the need to act urgently and differently. I know that we're providing CKLA this year, that more direct instruction piece through Amplify. Is that one of the methods you're bringing on? You mentioned math being a vital urgency. What methods are you using there? Is it just Eureka with Fidelity? Is it, bringing in that basic proficiency up and then having Eureka? Is it double dipping?
I think to start with your first comment, CKLA has really given some freshness to the system and some urgency and some needed change, especially around our ELA curriculum. So we are really working with really intentionally understanding what that curriculum brings to our students and how we support them, and we're already seeing really great results with that. I think specific to the math piece, we're ensuring that we carve out time for very specific math coaching around the instructional pieces. Eureka is a great curriculum, but it can be challenging for students who arrive into a new module with gaps from the previous module, right? So making sure that we're working with our school embedded coach and our district embedded coach to ensure that our pacing is correct, that our students are engaging in a equip model, which is what the Eureka pre-module to get them the skills they need for the upcoming module, that is in place, and we're supporting during our intervention time with what are the skills they need to access Tier 1 instruction. For a long time at Wilson, the narrative around intervention has been we need to fill every single gap that exists for our students, which is often a really tricky, impossible task, and especially when you're looking at a math curriculum like Eureka that doesn't always circle around, one module is about division and the next module is about something else, right? And so our shift specifically around math is how do we use that intervention time to give our students access to the Tier 1 instructional curriculum, right? So how do we use that time to give them, this is coming up, you're gonna need this skill, let's teach it to you right now in a small group, and we know that based on your STAR scores because we've looked at the standards analysis, right? So just making sure that we're tighter there and then following that through with specific instructional tight cycle feedback like I talked about to teachers around math.
So it could be that preparing for the next module, Eureka pieces, or it could be just math fundamentals.
Yeah, I think that it just depends on student need, right? Yeah, absolutely, thank you.
Cool. As far as behavior goes, I know you had everybody has struggles with behavior. What strategies are you using? You mentioned some of them in here, but that accountability to behavior, to getting that on-task engagement.
I will say that significantly in my time at Wilson, our behavior incidents have decreased vastly. I think in my first. Sorry. In my time at Wilson, our behavior incidents have decreased significantly. I think with my first year there, we had cut that incident count in half, right? And that has continued to decrease over time. So not to say, like you mentioned, there's always behavior, there's always students that need additional support, but that is not something that is impeding our instructional ability at this time. And I think in the past, it may have been a bigger factor, but it's not as much at this time at all. We do support in many ways with behavior at Wilson. Of course, we have kind of our Tier 1 positive behavior intervention system, like what is the behavior in the cafeteria, and we teach that and we practice that and we reward that, and that's part of our kind of onboarding at the beginning of the year. We also have our social emotional curriculum around random acts of kindness and what it looks like to get along with others and social skills and those kind of things that our students often need support with in a setting. And then we have a fantastic counselor who supports with that as well. But really, to me, the biggest lever is around classroom connection. When students want to be in their classroom and they want to be connected to their teacher and they feel that connection with their teacher, we see a dramatic decrease of students not wanting to be in class. I'm gonna call out Ms. Fox over here who's patiently stayed. She has a student in her class, she's a new 4th grade teacher at Wilson, just to give you an anecdote around this. She has a student in her class who struggled in years past, and we're not fully free of those struggles, right? But the other day he was frustrated at recess and I said, Do you need to, I don't want you to enter back into class mad, I know you're not gonna be successful. Do you wanna come with me, we can talk, and then we can enter back into class? And he said, no, I need to go with Miss Fox and do my math exit ticket, I'm ready. So he was like, so that just I think speaks to where we've come with behavior, is that our students are saying, my teacher cares about me, my teacher supports me, and I need to be in the classroom with her.
Great. Last quick question. We heard from staffing, about staffing in the past 2 schools. So how is staffing looking?
We have some really great hires this year. For the first year that I've been at Wilson, we are fully staffed with fully licensed teachers. We don't have any positions that are filled with long-term subs or people who are trying to figure out licensing in any way. And our new staff members are so excited, so engaged in moving the work forward. I mentioned a story about a teacher who is in the Leader in Agency program. She's on our instructional leadership team. She's really leaning into the work, and that's the same teacher that I see those really high levels of engagement. I still would echo Ray with really thinking about potentially with this board, thinking about centralized staffing for the Southeast area specifically, because those hires can be tricky. However, the people that we've been able to bring on this year are really high quality.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Director Huber.
Sounds like you have a strength when it comes to those short-term cycles in coming into those classrooms and not making it a negative, kind of threatening, intimidating experience. How does that work when you're trying to teach them how to teach different populations, such as like English language learners? You've got students with disabilities, because I know there's subpopulations where we're also trying to improve their scores and outcomes. And are you giving different kinds of instruction towards different groups?
Yeah.
Or is it when you're in the spot of the moment things, is that something you do more in like one of those longer cycles?
I think that's a good question. I think it varies. So we use our district coaching or walkthrough forms to really like anchor ourselves in the instructional practices we should see in the classroom, right? Our district agency walk or our district instructional look fors, right? And we push those out to staff and we kind of understand like this is our base level of what the instructional practices in the building are, right? But when we visit a classroom, yes, we are looking at what are the specific scenarios or I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but the specific aspects of that classroom that make it an individual classroom in a different place for every student that's in there. And yes, we absolutely give specific feedback to those teachers based on the students they have in their room, and I think that comes from being in classrooms frequently, looking at the data and knowing our students. A piece that's associated with your question is really around what I've found that is a big lever is that when we're in classrooms this much, we're not only supporting with in-the-moment coaching, we're also able to collect really valuable school-wide data. So we're able to say, hey, I noticed we're struggling with having our second language learners access the vocabulary in CKLA. Here's a teaching tool that I'm gonna push out whole school in my weekly email. It's gonna respond directly to this trend that I've seen all week in classrooms, right? So it's been really helpful to be able to get again, short cycle feedback then to everyone around, hey guys, we're all seeing this in our classrooms.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions. Director.
It's because you haven't looked over here in the last 30 seconds.
I saw your hand go up. Okay, go ahead.
I know you have engagement from parents because you're spending, even like next week having a cultural event. But in the improvement plan, I don't see specifically any reference to parents. It mentioned stakeholders a couple of times. Can you address how parents might have been involved and will be involved in your improvement plan?
Absolutely. So last year, I just want to back up a little bit. Last year, our MIS2 was strictly around parent involvement. We wanted to really focus on what are our parents, how can we involve our parents authentically in the education of their students, right? And that work is not done, but like that wasn't, when we looked at MIS2 this year, that wasn't the most urgent data piece to act on, right? That was really around engagement of our students. That doesn't mean we're not involving our parents with engagement of our students, right? I can add pieces to that action plan as it's a living document around the work that we've been doing. One of the biggest areas that we've really worked to engage our students is an additional parent meeting that we've implemented in the past 2 years called Bienvenidos, where we welcome new parents to the system of education in America, and we talk about what that looks like and what different aspects of education that they may not be aware of, like how do you know when school's canceled for a snow day? How do you call your child in sick? When is your child too sick, right? And we've been able to build that group to talk about how do we then work on things like our major improvement strategy to ensure that your child is authentically engaged at school, how to know when something isn't right between them and a peer and how to support with that, how to know when the feedback they're getting from their teacher, what that means, those kind of pieces, right? So really just working to support our parents as well as they journey through the educational system here. And I think that's a big lever as well for that strategy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for sending that invite for that cultural event. That's very nice. Couple of things. Just this slide up here, the second bullet point, I really appreciate you saying your turnaround status is temporary. You heard the urgency, why you should get out of it. Otherwise, you're going to make frequent visits to the board if you continue in this status next year. And we don't want to say we love you, but not in this thing. Let's celebrate you. So it's really important in that first year that you are able to move away from the state watch list. So it's a much easier process. And secondly, it looks like you've got a strong group of teachers returning based on the NGP. That's good to know that you are doing good work. Superintendent Gall, anything you need to summarize?
Again, I would love anybody from Wilson, please stand up and tell us who you are and how long you've been with us. It'd be great. Go ahead.
Dawn Fox, fourth grade. This is my first year at Wilson.
Awesome. Welcome.
Audrey Talamantes, intervention. It's my third year at Wilson.
Awesome. Thank you for being with us. Sheridan didn't really get a chance to talk a little bit about Mountain Math. What do we call it?
Mountain Math.
Mountain Math. Yeah, and just as another example of the power of central office kind of ideating that says a third of our students are at grade level for math. That's not just a student issue, that's also an adult issue, that's a curricular resource issue and a deeper learning issue, Director Jurgensen. But I'd love for you just to kind of close us out and help me climb that Mountain Math.
So Mountain Math is a consistent daily practice that our teachers engage in either as a warm-up or like a transitional activity, and it really doesn't take that much time at all. The purpose of Mountain Math is to keep skills that students are learning in Eureka fresh and sharp as we move towards CMAS. We spoke about how a module is around this topic and then it's around this topic, right? But the beauty of Mountain Math is that I wish I had a picture of it. Like there's a bunch of cards and the teachers move the card to the next thing, and so they get multiple examples of a standard that they can practice independently and keep those skills sharp. So as standards are introduced for the grade level in Eureka, teachers introduce different components of Mountain Math, and students spend the first 5 minutes after lunch recess, for example, filling out the first 5 questions on Mountain Math, saying, oh, I remember the graphing, I remember this, I'm keeping those skills sharp, right? So just making sure that, of course, we're having high quality tier 1 math instruction and we're introducing new standards, but we really have to ensure that those standards stay sharp, because I was just talking with second grade about this. They had a graphing on their assessment. It's not coming back. How do we respond to the graphing part on their assessment? Well, we make sure that we are really monitoring the work that's happening in Mountain Math, and we're monitoring that moving forward. So it just gives us another layer of guarantee that our students are staying sharp on those skills.
Thank you. Thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
One final thought to you, Superintendent Gall, and this can be for the next week's work session. Something that I'm curious about is a lot of schools talked about the STAR testing data. How was the alignment of the STAR testing data to the CMAS test results that you saw? Maybe that comes part of the district conversation.
Yeah, generally we saw a slip in our connection between STAR and CMAS. What we haven't quite determined yet is that because of the small school challenge that we have. Last year we were roughly 0.78 correlation. This year we were about 0.56. Is that right, Dr. Colletti? But we still have to map that out and see are some of the outliers, as you saw each one of these schools come forward with individual classrooms that were able to say that this is where we lost the overall score of the building. For us, I think if we filter some of that out, we might see the correlation of STAR to CMAS be a little bit better. What I would say, and what we're never looking for is any excuse on why we're not performing on CMAS. And so correlation of STAR to CMAS is really just an indicator of whether or not that is a good cycle data point for us. What we are now is we're just much shorter and much tighter on these end of module, these topic quizzes, and all the way down to daily exit tickets. So we know more concretely, particularly at each individual classroom, are we or are we not on learning trajectory for the scope and sequence and the pacing that we're asking for, and what is the percentage of children? I think you also heard from each individual principal today, anecdotal evidence that we know, whether by learning standard or by individual student that comes forward, that it's a different culture inside these buildings now, and that the rigor is now being adopted by the students in concert with the staff. And that's where the magic happens. The relationship between the student, the teacher, and the content is the center of anything that we talk about. Curricular resources, instructional strategies, deployment of coaching, everything that is when learning happens. That is also when adult learning happens, which is why as we go through these coaching cycles, I ask everybody to think, why is it that when we have a student that doesn't express their ability to articulate learning to a grade level standard, that we know that we have interventions and that we know that we have strategies for it. We are now trying to turn a district on its head that says we do the same thing in an adult capacity. A student is I'm sorry? That's okay, sorry. A student is never wrong for entering the space for not being on grade level. It is our work with the student to get them there. A staff member is never wrong for owning a low SGP, as long as we are open into an environment that says, how do we all improve in this work together? That's really the secret of what we're trying to do as a district, is if we treat adult learning in the same way that we're tackling our student learning, then the entirety of the system grows. And as the entirety of the system grows, the whole is always greater than the sum of its parts. So with that, thank you.
Appreciate it. The only reason I asked that question is if that internal assessment that we have in STAR, if it's working, or if there's
we will evaluate that. We're just tighter than that right now, so I think this year we'll be able to really make a point on that. What it is it's telling us what we know.
Okay.
Right.
Moving on to the last item on the work session discussion at this time. What's that?
Oh, sorry.
If the board wants, is the board interested in taking a break at this time? Before
Yeah, I'd like 10
Great,
minutes.
great. Let's take a 10-minute break. Let's reconvene at 6:45. We still have one agenda item of the work session discussion and then executive session.
Okay.
What? Get started again, it's a little past 6:45. We got one more item on the agenda, which is the energy performance contract discussion. I'm going to give a little bit of context and turn it over to Superintendent Gall. The energy audit was performed by Schneider Electric and school by school, building by building, they were able to identify upgrades which could translate into energy savings. The board looked at that information at the work session before summer break and discussed it as well in August as part of the bond conversation. At the board retreat, it was requested that the board clearly identify a finance mechanism that bring the discussion back to the table here, and identify a finance mechanism to invest in energy upgrades if we want to move in that direction. So today's discussion is mainly about that finance mechanism, and all of it in alignment also with the potential bond conversation that we are engaged in it as well. That's the essential focus of the discussion today. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Gall.
Yeah, I'm happy to hand this over to Deputy Superintendent, the Honorable Dr. Brandon Comfort, for his presentation. Brandon.
So before you get there, at the end of this discussion, we do need some board guidance on how best to proceed. So we have clarity that we can communicate to the district in this regard as to how to pursue this as we go further. With that, back to you.
Yeah, good evening, board. Thanks for having me. First, I will start by asking for some grace. I did add a couple of slides over the last 12 hours. Director Ott pointed out the lack of a financial analysis comparing going now versus waiting a couple of years with energy performance projects. So I did build some additional slides. Obviously, we will post this after the meeting, but I just wanted to ask for a little bit of grace because I think originally I had 5 minutes. I might take 7. But I promise I will be brief. Okay, a big picture here. What I want to make sure the board understands is we have 2 good options. There's not a bad option and a good option, right? We just have an option that we think is significantly more strategic, and that is now how we do things as a district. Our capital process is strategic. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay. So a little bit about how did we get here. I will again remind the board the superintendent brought the concept of energy performance contracting to the district in 2022. I want to remind the board of where we were in 2022. We were shortly off of a bond loss. We had no plan to recapitalize this district at that time. We had completely different leadership overseeing our financial office as well as our capital projects. And so at that point in time, the EPC was how do we demonstrate to our community that we are using our internal money in a creative way and also address utility costs. We have since done that in a significantly large way. What has happened over the last 3 years? The most aggressive recapitalization effort this district has seen in decades. I will draw your attention back to every single capital project presentation that we brought in front of the board. I'll remind you of Palmer COP, $120 million that when we pass our bond, the community is not obligated for. We'll talk about that cost savings. Not to mention what we were able to do at Jenkins. You will not find another district in this state that has been able to recapitalize without going to the tax base any more than we have. We have fulfilled that obligation. This is something we don't talk about often. We do energy savings projects in the district. We have for decades. Since the 90s, if you look at it, our estimates is our general utility budget would run about $10 million. We run about $7 million because we've been doing energy savings projects. Just over the last 4 years, even though we've been talking about it, not in these silos, these are examples of silos of energy performance or energy saving projects that we've done. It is what we do. We have an energy guy on staff full time. It's his entire job. He watches utilities. He goes and checks thermostats. He does all of that work. We are in this business, and we will continue to be. Okay. My persisting considerations. Again, you'll see there on the left, we have 2 paths. Both are viable, but we think that something is more strategic. I realize the board, as did the superintendent and I, received a very large presentation from Snyder and the State Energy Office. There is nothing in that presentation that we have not considered already. I apologize to the board that I didn't bring you those considerations when we first met. I should have. What I will say is, even after that, our recommendation with the superintendent and myself remains the same. There is a process here that makes more logical sense, and we'll get into the why. Okay, some of the persisting considerations with an energy performance contract. First, the long payback period. When we do internal projects, we don't have as long of a payback period. Anytime we are looking at what is happening in this district in 2 decades, I have concerns about that. It doesn't mean they're not overcomable, but I have concerns. And so things like how long it's going to take to realize the full utility savings. Things like the life expectancy of some of the things that we're going to put in. While the project will pay for it, we're going to have to replace while we're still paying off debt. I'm not saying that the project won't pay for it, but we are going to likely have to replace while we are still paying off that debt. That's a concern for me. You'll also see the implications of bond projects. I will give Snyder complete credit. They are flexible. They have wanted to work with us to rescope projects in a variety of ways to try to minimize that. Before we were talking about a bond, we had honest conversations about what schools I was uncertain of their future. And so we were smart about where we were going to put projects. When we do a $750 million bond, it is impossible to not duplicate effort. It's impossible. What I don't want is that $25 million of energy projects influences or delays or changes the timing of $750 million worth of projects. It is impossible that those are not going to overlap. To give you a very simple thing, we're going to go and change lights in a hallway. What if I move that hallway? Then I've lost the value of those lights. I have to do that again. It's not like I can move a hallway and somehow cut out the ceiling and then re-put that ceiling in there. So there will be implications, regardless of Snyder's ability to be flexible with us. Then there's these assumptions. Here's what I'm going to tell you. I don't know more about energy usage than Snyder. I'm not pretending to. I'm using reason here. I'm not worried about the usage rates that we've projected or predicted over the next 3 to 5 years. I'm not. I'm worried about year 18, 19, and 20. If the board saw last night, the Colorado Springs Utilities named that they're going to time of day rates. I don't know what that's going to do to my personal utility budget, but I just want to draw your attention. Over the last 20 years, look at the political landscape and our feelings on energy usage. They have varied greatly depending on who's in certain political offices, depending on a number of things. So I'm not doubting their ability to project, but they are that projections. That's a risk when we get longer out. Utility rate increases, again, the same thing. They use the right numbers. They use the right data. I'm not saying I have better numbers or better data. What I'm saying is we are obligating the system to a decision for 2 decades. This is a board that has been fearful of that, obligating future boards to decisions. Facility footprint. Perhaps I'm incorrect. I don't feel like we know as a district, as a board and a senior governance team that we are willing right now to guarantee that every single one of our campuses will be here in 20 years in the same way that it is now. If we are, I'll take that feedback. And again, if we close a school in a decade, well, it won't be you guys, it'll be another board. If we close a school in a decade, of course we save energy then, because we're not paying the utility bill. And of course, Snyder's not going to take credit for that, but we've put value into that building that we're not going to then realize that full investment. Again, about the length of the obligation. Those are my persisting concerns about the project in general. Our partners, our external partners are smart people. They built a good project plan. It's not about that. It's about how tight we have to be over time to ensure that we realize those guarantees, and I'm going to continue to draw down into this a little bit. Okay, this is a slide that came from the Energy Office with Snyder in terms of the cost, or the difference in cost of doing this work now versus doing this work later. I will admit, when you look at it through one lens, this makes sense. I've talked to the board before about the difference in construction rates over time. It is cheaper to do projects earlier. That's why we did the COP. That's true. Now I'm uncertain as to why that tax incentive goes away if we do it later. Perhaps that's expiring. I haven't had time to really explore that. I will find that answer. But I'm going to assume all their numbers are right. And actually, I used their same math in some of my calculations in a financial analysis. But here's what I want to tell you. It's not this simple. It's not one-dimensional. This is what we do as a system internally. We evaluate all possible elements of this. That's not the obligation of the Energy Officer Schneider. They're looking at it through their lens. That makes sense. I have to look at it through multiple lenses because that's what you deserve as a board. So let's look at some of those lenses. First of all, this is the least important to me, but it is important, time and effort. So if we look at financing this project now, we're likely going to finance it through a COP. Okay? I just went through this process. It is a significant time investment to go through a COP. It is literally, on paper, financially, the exact same thing we have to do for a $750 million bond. It's not like, well, it's only $25 million, so it's a shorter process. It is an incredibly intense process in which, if that's the board's direction, I will divert my attention and my team's attention away from preparing bond scopes and planning for engaging the community, and I will direct it towards this. Again, this is my least concern, but I need to point out, I don't flip a switch. I don't call a bank tomorrow and say, hey, I need $25 million, and they're like, yeah, Brandon will be there on Friday. It's an intense process. It will take time. Secondly, I really want to have a conversation about the cost of additional COPs. This first portion is about early calls. So in the presentation you received, it was simple. Pay for it now and pay it off when you get the bond in 2 years. I wish it was that simple. The shorter the call, which is the ability to pay off debt earlier, the less attractive a COP is to an investor. They're not guaranteed the same level of money. And when it's less attractive to the investor, the interest rate goes through the roof. So that $2 million that was promised as being construction savings, that's already impacted by a different interest rate. This is why when we did the Palmer COP, I would have loved to have brought the board a call option at 3 years or 4 years or 5 years. We went through this dance over time of how early can we do that without drastically impacting the interest rate. We landed that on a target, on a dot. We were managing that within the 12-hour increment to make sure that we sold the COPs at the exact right time. And here's the other big difference. The $120 million COP for Palmer is in a guaranteed funding source in the MLO. Guaranteed. Never changes. That drastically helped our interest rate and the ability to sell the COPs. That's not what will happen with this. This is a general fund obligation. That's a whole different game. General fund is not guaranteed year to year. That will be a financial consideration. It's like when you go to buy a house and you're going to mortgage it. What's the one thing they tell you when you're actively in the process of buying a house? Don't make any other big financial decision. What they really tell you is don't go buy a car. Don't go buy a car. If we go on and take additional debt in any form, especially if we're obligating the general fund, it is going to impact our interest rate on a bond. It will. Because now we've obligated part of our general fund. We've obligated part of that fund balance on an ongoing basis. Again, we just walked this dance when we went through the Palmer COP. It's very, very, very delicate, right? I know that Moody's rating agency now like the back of my hand because I'm like, just give me the AAA, like, and it was, I mean, it's an intense thing, and we were mitigating and managing it all just completely through the process. So it's not that simple. Paying off that debt, just, yeah, a 2-year call. It's not that simple. It will have implications into what we do in the future. Okay. Another thing that was brought up is the taxpayer viewpoint. Is the taxpayer going to negatively view the fact that we decided to put energy projects in the bond rather than using our own money to do this. Again, I don't disagree with this statement. Been there, done that. We've done this, $120 million. I'll stand at any microphone with any community member and say, you won't find another district in this state that used their money internally to fund something as large as $120 million COP. That decision is saving us $16 million at the same rate of cost of instruction that you saw in that presentation. 16 million, 2 million. Additionally, if we really want to talk about taxpayer savings, let's talk about every year the bond is delayed to do that same level of project, it's $37.5 million. If we wait 10 years, $750 million is well over $1 billion in project. So I'm tracking this. Again, this is why we brought you the COP. In fact, in that presentation, they used my construction escalation slide. I believe in it. We've done it. And then here's the big thing for me. Again, I have considerations about the project. I definitely have some concerns about the financing mechanism, but then I just want to get to the bottom dollar. Okay? On the left, this is part of the Snyder presentation that came to you back in June. And what you're basically going to see is over 20 years, they're going to guarantee that we save $46 million in utilities, and we're going to pay $41 million in interest and principal. So, while it says $10 million is projected on the right, we're guaranteed a $5 million positive net flow. That's great. Again, in other circumstances, I'll sign on that dotted line right now. But we have another option, this option. If we pay it in the bond, we just realized those savings. There is no debt payment. It's in the bond. Remember, paying for something in a bond and paying something like this through the general fund are vastly different things. And I'll give you an example. I'm going to draw you to 2044. None of you will be on the board at that time. The superintendent and I will not be here at this time. But our successors are going to be here. And if we do these energy projects, there's going to be an estimated over $3 million in utility savings that year. That's a great thing. And then those utility savings are going to have to go to pay off the utility debt, not anything else. I want to draw the board back to last year. We had to manufacture those raises. We had to build and cut and clean. We had to do all of those things to get to the raise level that the board committed. We're going to have $3 million of available general fund money, and it's not going to go towards compensation, and it's not going to go towards other things that kids need. It's just going to go to fund the debt service. Again, without another option, worth it. It's not a bad idea. That's why the superintendent brought it. It's a good idea. We just have a better idea. If the board is so committed to wanting to drastically change utility prices or utility costs right now, direct the superintendent to direct me to bring you the capital budget that completely focuses on that. My team is ready. We'll take the project scope. We'll get as much done as we humanly can. We will run into the same concerns about duplicative work. I said that wrong. But we will do it. We have other mechanisms to do it. But I want to realize that full $46 million of savings over time, and not 41 million of it going towards a debt payment. Those are the options we have right now. We might find out in 13 months that the community says no. As the superintendent and I have said, we will absolutely bring this back. It is not a bad idea. We just have a stronger strategy right now. Okay, that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, appreciate it. I appreciate the new slides that you added as well, which provide some context to the document that we received from the Energy Office. With that, comments or questions from the board, it looks like we have two options at this time. One is to fund it now, which is the left option out there, and the debt that comes with it. And the second option is nobody is questioning the merits of investing in energy upgrades in our schools. It's the finance mechanism. The second option is to include it as part of the bond package. Director Jurgensen.
So the only thing that on the right side here, you're realizing the 46 million of savings
And in the left side, you're paying 41 for the cost of the work plus interest, which I think the cost of the work in today's dollars is 25 million.
Mhm.
So really, you need to take 25 million plus 2 years of
Sure.
inflation.
Yep, so you're
from
right.
that
So
46 million.
yeah, I'm probably
to
at
get your real
43
net.
million, probably at 43 million, right? If we, and I'll be generous, at 2 years of construction costs, I mean, the numbers we saw were $2 million worth of loss, but I'll add to that a little bit. And actually, I'll add to it a little bit, because over the bond, it will take a little longer, so that's fair, right? But again, the vast difference between 5 million and even 35 million in terms of positive cash flow for the district.
Right.
But that's a fair point.
Just to realize the upfront cost we still have to pay when the bond comes of 25 to 30 million. So really, it's not a full 46 million of,
Yep.
of the guaranteed benefit, but
Yep.
it is a quicker savings over the immediate fix.
Dr. Bankus.
When you talked about duplicate projects or replacing, for those of us who've lived in Colorado Springs over a period of time, how many times have Garden of the Gods been torn up? They go ahead and they put out the water pipes. Then they come back and they tear up the road to do the next thing. And then they how many times have we done that? I think our taxpayers will take a look at what did you call it? Duplicative?
Duplicative? Yeah, I think I said it wrong,
Duplicative?
right once and wrong once, so.
Yes, duplicative projects. It won't sit well. That's part of it. The other part of it is I have reservations about committing the district to this long-term loan. And we have elections coming up in November. We'll have new members coming on. I'm taking a look at that and saying, I agree with, and I'm glad to hear that this project's gonna go forward. What we're talking about is how we're gonna pay for it. And is it pay me now or pay me later? And I'm glad for the comparison, and thank you for revising so that we get a better picture of how much it is that we're actually going to realize out of the savings. But again, it's an obligation that we don't have to take on when we are able to pass a bond. So I guess what I'm saying is that I would like to wait.
Do you have any questions for Dr. Comfort? Thank you. And just adding on to it, I'm reminded about a month or so back when we visited Jenkins Middle School, and it was ready to open at that time. And one of the comments I made to you was that we invested in that bathrooms a summer back, and I said, like, I'm glad that we invested in the 6th grade wing, because if that bathrooms had been in the 7th and 8th grade, it would be part of the rubble.
That's exactly right.
In out there, and then we would have invested whatever amount, $500,000 in those bathrooms, would have been part of the rubble. Okay, yeah, I'll come to you.
Okay, so
Director Hafley.
a few things. Ditto, first of all, to what Dr. Bankus said. To me, common sense just dictates that we do this through a bond, that we don't put taxpayer dollars at risk by paying interest when we can pay cash next year. On top of that, I haven't heard anybody say this, so I'll say it. I haven't really felt good about how we've been receiving undue pressure to move forward with a contract from multiple entities. The State Department of Energy, amongst others, we didn't request that input, and it lacks local context, and just, it doesn't feel good. It feels kind of gross to have that pushed on us. I don't care for that kind of way to do business personally. So I don't like being pushed around on that. This obligates future boards. I don't want to do that. All these assumptions, 20 years, 30 years, for me it comes down to, if you can pay cash for a car, why buy it and pay interest? So to me, it would be more common sense to wait for the bond, and that way we don't have to mess around with taxpayer dollars and pay interest on that. So I'm not for that. I'm much more for what Dr. Comfort presented.
Okay, thank you, Director Hifley. Director Ott.
Thank you. Just some comments based on what you mentioned, and then Katrina, if you could bring up the thing that I asked to be shared. I'm looking at page 21. So we've talked about past projects. We've been able to go forward without obligating the taxpayers. This allows us to do that again.
This allows us what?
To move forward on a project without extra taxing of taxpayers, us, basically. And on this slide, it mentions it's not just financial. We're talking about classroom upgrades that we can have sooner rather than later. We have not just, I know Superintendent Gall has spoken to a commitment to sustainability, but we're talking about changes we can do in 1 year versus putting out at least a year while we may or may not pass a bond. And then beyond that, we still have the financial dance, as you referenced. But those changes will be 2 years in coming at a minimum. The Schneider Electric was speaking with the district as late as July in how accommodations could be made around the bond. And the information that has been shared with us, which Director Hafley, I understand your concerns there, but personally I'm really glad we have this additional information because as Dr. Comfort mentioned, when I saw the slides that we had specifically asked for financial comparisons and there were no real true comparisons there. There was nothing for us to move forward on. So I can understand the state's concerns that yes, we have information. I'm not sure what local context is missing. It's very local. And they've shared how other districts have worked with bonds. It's not an unusual circumstance.
Where was that information on how, I don't understand your point about other districts working on going forward with a project like this and working on with their bond.
Can you go to page 29 for me, or slide 29, Katrina?
Okay.
There you go. So this has been districts, some bigger, some smaller than us, that have worked with an energy performance contract and a bond, and how they have either coordinated or used the EPC to say, hey, everybody, we've saved you money, let's move forward.
Okay.
The obligating, I want to address the obligating future boards, which I think we do all the time, from urban renewal projects and the TIFs, the bond plan itself, the past it was the MLO, even academic and facilities management plans. We are always, to some extent, obligating future boards. To the energy usage and timing variations, I would say that's all the more reason we want to commit sooner rather than later to having savings, because they will be charging us more. And I know that some of that is after school, but that seems to me like an incentive, as energy costs we can assume will go up, that we should start saving sooner rather than later. And Katrina, can you go to 41 for me? Another comment while she pulls that up. I assume that our facilities staff have other projects to do. I would prefer that we have someone come in and assist us rather than, so we get more work done and get the savings sooner, instead of taking our facility staff and redirecting them. So just the key takeaways here, I think there's so much benefit to moving ahead now. We've spent the $571,000 in 3 years developing the project. Well, we didn't as a board, but they did. It's apparent that the energy performance contract approach would save the district money overall. $2 million over the cost of the project. We're losing $1.5 million annually while we wait. Sorry, these are some notes that I pulled together from the whole presentation. again, in June and July, Schneider Electric was collaborating with our team to ensure the scope and the energy projects did not overlap. So I can't help but wonder why additional time was spent. We as a board wanted to move forward in June. The bond was not completely off of our radar. So the other part that was in that first slide I asked to be brought up.
What additional questions do you have for Dr.?
I'm almost there.
Okay.
Okay, so I know we can help students now, and we obviously know from the presentations tonight, we can use all the help we can get in academics. So I want to know how we explain to parents that we chose to wait rather than improve their children's learning opportunity as soon as we could. And then I'd like you to help me understand why waiting is better for the district when the analyses that we've seen show it costs more and delays benefits. So I guess that's it. Why wait? Really, I understand that you're talking about the bond and it sounds like, ooh, cash up front. But the costs long-term and the costs to our students when we could be improving conditions now. I keep coming back to that.
Yeah, I'd love to respond. First of all, as I said, if the board wants to direct, we will make this a capital priority this year. That's not our team doing the work. That's our team working with the same subcontractors that Schneider would work with. They don't have a unique group of some subcontractors that only do their projects. We're all going to work with Olson Plumbing. It's all going to be the same group, right? Now, we will have less overhead. I'm not paying an intermediary to do that. So it will be for less of a cost. Will it take time of my project management team? Absolutely. But it's not going to be my facilities guys who are out there doing that work instead of doing other work in the district. So that's one answer. So that's if we want to, regardless of the duplicative potential projects, if we want to go do it now, I'll bring you that plan next month. We'll get after it. And we'll get as much as we humanly can done, and then
You're saying to start on the list now, contract the work out?
Absolutely.
So we can come to that.
Now again, I'm going to have the same concerns about undoing some of that work, but happy to do it with the same people that the third party would use. In terms of the cost, that I would argue all day long that $2 million over the next 2 years is more important than $35 or $40 million over the course of the next 20 years, right? I've brought you projects in the past, which it is about, let's maximize the money now. That doesn't make sense in this situation. We have another option that makes more sense over time. So financially, waiting for a bond completely makes sense for all of the reasons that I already described. I can't bring you the numbers right now of the impact of taking out debt now or a loan now and then trying to go for a bond. It will be sufficient, or it will be significant. So there's all of that cost that we're not quite talking about in this. But I just would draw back to this slide, right? I'm going to pay $41 million in payment, or I'm not going to pay a payment at all. So financially, that completely makes sense. And again, if the will of the board is to maximize the student environment right now, we'll get on it.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah, go ahead.
How long do you think it would take to, if Schneider Electric, and the state has guarantees that we don't get through our own program, and I think that's part of the appeal. If we were to do a bond, how long is it gonna take to get the same savings in the same updates to our students' classrooms? I just don't see it all happening in 1 year.
Yeah,
especially by 2027.
I think here would be my counter, Director Ott, is I think the way that statement is made is that we're on a level playing field, that we have quality facilities, and we're trying to make these adjustments to some other settings to improve things. The condition of our facilities is where it is, so that the $750 million is the real work, right? That is the transformational change for the conditions in which our students currently exhibit. And like I said, it's $37.5 million every year that we don't do that, right? That's the cost to the district. So I'm super pleased that the board is considering 26 and not 28. I had another point, but I don't remember. I apologize.
Okay, we I want to give other board members who haven't had an opportunity to talk yet, and that's Director Huber, Director Carey. Do you guys have anything that you want to ask at this time, comments, anything like that, before we come to a decision point?
I had a comment.
Okay.
It's not really a question though.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, others have made just comments. Before you get to that, I don't want to forget one thing that I do want to counter to you. You said obligating future boards, and you mentioned TIFs and URAs. TIFs and URAs are backfilled by the state, and so there is no financial obligation for future
We
boards.
don't get the increase that we might otherwise have gotten, I believe, right?
Yeah, but that is backfilled by the state from the financial.
My comment is just, we have asked, even in my time on the board, a number of rather audacious things from Dr. Comfort. The polymer COP, going to double-digit compensation package last year when the rest of the state was ridiculously underwater financially, trimming $6.5 million in administrative costs in response, to our complaints about kind of what I've referred to on several occasions as the scariest graph in the world. We've asked him and Superintendent Gall to push spending on instruction from 60% to 70%. We asked him to take any new money from the state and move all of it towards compensation. And Dr. Comfort has delivered on every one of those things. I think his advice here ought to constitute strong evidence for us.
Okay. You good?
Yep.
Thank you. Any other? Jason?
I didn't speak on this one.
Okay.
I liked the presentation from the Colorado Department of Energy. I think what got me tonight was the piece of when you're, in underwriting for a mortgage, you don't go buy 10 grand of furniture on, 24 months financing, while you're in under contract. And so to me, I think that stuck out because I was gung-ho for getting this going for our kids now. But I see that in the piece of in the finance piece of not having, nobody's gonna wanna buy a 2-year call bond, so they're just not for real.
That comes with an additional cost, which is what you said, higher interest rates.
So I would love for us to get to work on our kids' classrooms, but I see the bigger strategy of doing a bunch of significant work for our buildings, which I think we need to focus on selling that to our community.
Okay.
Investment, so.
Okay, Director Huber, you have anything to add at this time? Okay, decision point. So I'm going to ask at this time if the board wants to provide some overall guidance through a thumbs up. So reading the discussions that the direction the board is moving in, I will go with this. If the board is comfortable in moving these energy efficiency discussion as part of the bond process, the bond discussion process, specifically tasking administration as they develop the overall scope for the bond, that they prioritize a bucket for energy efficiencies specifically, so that comes as a feedback from the community as well. And when that discussion is presented to the board, that's how the energy efficiencies are going to be addressed. Is that, so yes for it, a thumbs up?
So to be clear, I just want to be clear that a thumbs up means we wait for the bond.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's what I'm saying. Yes, so is a thumbs up waiting for the bond? That is good. I'm waiting to see, I've got enough thumbs up. The second question that I would have to the board, based on Dr. Comfort's feedback to the board, there is a possibility that if the board is in agreement, we can direct the superintendent to, they've done already some energy efficiency work, as you showed in the third or the fourth slide out there, target some of our capital money to address low-hanging fruit between now and the next year. I'm not saying the whole capital project. They can come up with what is good amount of money, efficient use of money, so that when we do go for a bond discussion a year from now, community, we can demonstrate in good faith that we have used our internal dollars in addressing some of those challenges. Is the board comfortable in providing that feedback to Superintendent Gall?
Sure.
Okay, great. Superintendent Gall, you got that feedback. So when you are prioritizing that capital budget, address low-hanging energy efficiencies that can be addressed at this point in time.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate this discussion. I think we came to a resolution on this. With that, we are at the end of our discussion at this work session. If I don't see, I don't have anything else to add at this time. Director Jurgensen.
I do have a quick mention. I saw D11 had a Facebook post about it, but I wanted just to read something briefly on Constitution Day.
Okay.
So on this day, we recognize the signing of what I would argue is the second most God-inspired document in the history of the planet. On September 17th, 1787, just 11 short years after America declared independence from the crown, 56 of the most intelligent political minds on the planet gathered in Philadelphia's Independence Hall to sign the Constitution of the United States. Daniel Webster stated, "I regard it," quoting the Constitution, "as the work of the purest patriots and wisest statement that ever existed, aided by the smiles of a benignant providence. It almost appears a divine interposition in our behalf." Senator Robert Byrd recognized the need for there to be a reminder to citizens and our schools today of this great nation that the founding documents laid the groundwork for what is today the greatest nation on earth. In 2004, Congress passed Public Law 108447 that designated September 17th as Constitution Day. It also requires that all federally funded educational institutions and federal agencies provide education programs on the U.S. Constitution each year. So, hence the Facebook post today. Apologize. Today, I think that's about all I got actually. I'll end with a Benjamin Franklin quote. Ben Franklin's cautionary statement when asked by Elizabeth Willing, "Well, doctor, what have we got, a republic or a monarchy?" To which he answered, "A republic if you can keep it." So much work to do on teaching about the founding fathers and the intelligence that brought this nation to bear. So.
Okay, thank you. Today, Wednesday, September 17th is Constitution Day.
Sir.
With no other comment at this time, this work session is adjourned at 7:28 p.m. We need to get to the book dais to start the executive session.